Welcome to another episode of the Arena Craft Podcast, a podcast focused exclusively on Magic the Gathering, Arena, and now D&D. My name is Arjuna. I'm one of your hosts. I'm joined today by one of the world's darkest wanderers, one of the world's highest level mages. Sometimes he's even level 1. It is the one and best of one, Covert Go Blue, notorious Blue Mage. How are you doing today in the Forgotten Realms, my friend?
I mean, I'm having a great time in the Forgotten Realms. I'm living it up, but I cannot go another second without acknowledging that you have brought the sexy werewolf look to the show today, and that those listening on platforms like Spotify are not getting the full experience because the freaking wolf ears are killing me, man.
I don't know what you're talking about, man.
Oh my god. Oh man. That's content.
For you audio listeners, you're just gonna have to find out. Head over to Covert Go Blue's YouTube channel and just watch the video version, and you'll know what we're talking about. I actually don't know what you're talking about, Covert Go Blue, but whatever. I'll just let that one hang.
Okay.
So anyway, yes, we have been adventuring widely in the Forgotten Realms these past couple of days. The set is now fully released, which you should already know if you're listening to this. But if you've been living in a hole, go turn on your arena and play the new set. It is awesome. So, well, that's just okay. Basically, what we're going to do today is we're going to do a set review. It is a full set review, but we're going to do it differently than we've done it in the past. So if you have been a fan of the show for a while, you will remember the meandering 10-hour set reviews that we used to do. And while we enjoyed those a lot, I think it's just better for everyone that we've decided not to do that anymore. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to go over just cards that we think are key cards, key archetypes, stuff that stood out to us. It's kind of a mix of like a top list with a bit more of a comprehensive overview. So we're kind of trying to maybe glean the best of what we used to do and just, trim it down a bit.
It is the complete partial set review show.
Exactly. All the cards you need to know about and a handful that you really don't.
Yeah.
So before we get into that, though, I'm just curious to hear, how have your first couple of days in the Forgotten Realms been, CGB?
Yeah, this has been a bizarre spoiler season because in the past, we usually get to do a show where we talk about all the cards before we even play with them. And at this point, and the way that they just did it, the full set was spoiled on a Tuesday, right? And then they released the whole set on Arena on a Thursday. There was no spot for a show. Your schedule didn't allow it. Neither did mine. Oh, by the way, holiday week. Just to give you a little more extra if you needed to be concerned about the amount of time you have. So we're doing a show where we do a set review, having actually played with the cards, which is not something we've really done before. And I've spent the last few days trying, whenever I had time, to play with the cards. I had a family reunion to go to. My sister's in town from Arkansas. I rarely see her. But I have spent a lot of time watching videos in the evening, basically not sleeping at all, building decks and playing when I can. And 2022 Standard is where it's at, dude.
It's so good, dude.
Oh my gosh.
I love Magic again.
It's that simple for you. You love Magic again. Oh my God. Yeah.
It's awesome.
It's a really bizarre, it is changing speed limit drastically. It's like going from a 60 to a 25 zone in a lot of ways, but it's a really charming 25 zone with a lot of cute little shops that you forgot existed and some ice cream flavors you can't wait to try on the corner. So you're really happy to be out of that 60 mile an hour zone. I don't know where this metaphor is going, but what I've played in Standard 2022 is a lot of dragons. A format where dragons are good in a number of decks that sounds like a sweet format, doesn't it?
It's so sweet. And you happen to be in one of the few colors that got, I would say, 2 playable dragons, right? In blue decks. So, that's pretty sweet, right? 2 playable blue dragons. That's awesome.
Yeah. And how about you? What have you been jamming with so far? What are you feeling? And it sounds like you're playing a ton of 2022, but what are you doing in there?
Yeah, so I kicked it off with some Is It Dragons. It's an obvious place to go. Deck felt pretty strong. I did a very dragon-focused build of it. But where I actually ended up settling on for my Mythic run, which happened very quickly once I started playing this deck, was, yes, it's happening again. Arjuna is back to mono green. And basically what happened was that for a long time there, we didn't really have playable 2-drops in mono green and standard. And this actually led to like notable mono green mage Rumty just quipping that you just play a 2-drop in mono green to just bait out a counter. He was like getting his 2-drops up towards the edge of the cliff and just shoving them off. Like, thanks for your loyal service, Lemming. Taste it. And then hoping that his 3-drop stuck. But now we actually have not one, but 2 very playable and relevant 2-drops in the archetype. And it is transformational, dude. So
yeah, not to
it's also been really...
I was going to say not to bury it too much, but maybe 2 of the best cards in the set are green 2-drops.
I couldn't agree more. Yep, I couldn't agree more. And they're both performers. It's also just been fun to pull out some other, like, green is a color kind of like white, where they've printed a number of pretty playable cards that just got edged out by more playable cards. So we've in this format, we have a chance to run things like Old Growth Troll, which just haven't really been showing up in the past. And let me tell you, that card is pretty sweet. So yeah, so I've been doing a lot of crushing with mono green, and maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into the set review. But yeah, man, it feels good to have like multiple new or new-ish archetypes that are just playable and back on the map. And the format has felt really diverse, people trying a lot of things. I've gotten crushed by some really, really interesting decks that I would have never thought to build myself. So it's kind of a brewer's paradise at the moment. And if you haven't been playing the event, I highly recommend checking it out.
All right, I'm going after you. I'm going to try to get you to commit to this on the record, and I don't think it will be hard. 2022 format deep dive next week.
Oh, easily. The only question, Covert Go Blue, is how many hours you and the listeners have in you.
It always is. That always is the question when we record together. How much can we take? And since this is probably going to be a long one, we should get right to the taking, so to speak. So diving into a set review, what I've done this time, I took my stab at creating categories and dumping a bunch of the cards that we want to talk about in categories, so that we're just kind of going along themes. And if you have things that you want to talk about that address exact like those cards specifically, or that category of card, we can kind of cover it right then and there. And the very first topic I have, or we're calling it a topic or a category, is dragons. Now, we saw several of the dragons and we talked about a good amount of them before, but now we've seen the whole spoiler. The spoiler has a lot of dragons. Big surprise, D&D set. They're quite good in Standard 2022. I also want to say this before we get in. When I'm talking about a card, and you're wondering if I'm talking about future Standard, Standard 2022, or current Standard, assume it's one of the first two. And if you want to hear me review the card for current Standard, just look at the card, read it, figure out if it dies to Bone Crusher Giant, is or isn't bigger than a Lovestruck Beast, and does or doesn't come down before Embercleave wins the game.
Yeah.
Now
basically, almost none of these cards are basically going to see play on the regular queue. And I just as a side note, crafties, like, strap yourself in for, like, I think that for the next couple of months, we're going to be a future podcast. Because I think that the idea of playing like regular old boring ranked Standard at the moment just sounds probably like homework for both of us at the moment. And I think we will cover it, don't worry, like, we will cover it, especially if there's, big new developments in that world. But I think that for the majority, I think I can safely speak for the both of us that the majority of the time between now and when rotation happens, I think CGB are going to be very future focused.
Oh, yeah. And hopefully we can get a bunch of the crafty audience into this queue as well, because if there's one thing about this queue, I hope it's that it succeeds, because I want this to happen a lot.
Yes. And I want for our crafties to be freaking crushing it, dude. Like,
Yeah.
let's stack the top 1200, right? We solved this queue last time. We can do it again. I already feel like I've got a pretty solid handle on what's going on, and I'm sure you do as well. So that would be like a realization of the next dream for me for this podcast, is just to like get all of our listeners to be next leveling this format.
Oh yeah. So let's get it started. Let's start talking cards. First card on my list is Amrith, the Desert Doom. This one, I believe we talked about a little bit last week already. This beautiful 5-mana 5/5. And as far as reading the cards, I think what we're going to do is we're going to go through and we're going to read the cards that we haven't talked about on the cast before. But since a lot of you are already playing with these cards, especially some of the more popular ones like Amrith, I don't believe it's required to read those cards that we've already talked about on this podcast. Hold on, I got to do in my Arjuna thing. That we've already of all talked about on this podcast, and B of all are seeing a lot of play. So I think most of you know what Amrith, the Desert Doom does, the 5-mana 5/5 dragon. So
yeah,
I think this card is nuts. Playing with it was better than I really expected. The Ward 4 means usually it comes down on the battlefield and is not touchable, and it's bigger than most of the bodies that your opponent will play. And if they can't get through this, if this bricks their attack, it feels like the game is over. And this card, especially with Alrund's Epiphany as kind of the top end of the format, which if you ask me what the top end of the format is, I would say it's Alrund's Epiphany, 100%, is absolutely nuts. Because as soon as they take their shields down or you have a counter to protect it, you attack with it, you draw cards, you Alrund's Epiphany, you do it again. I think this card is really amazing. What's your experience with this sucker?
Yeah, it's a very solid card. I think both you and I expected it would be capable of good things, and it has not disappointed. It has done exactly what we thought it would do, in that it's been a speed bump for cards like Goldspan Dragon. It's been a speed bump for maybe a lot of these mono white decks that are trying to play like a bunch of spellbinders and stuff like that. So it does just happen to be larger than most of the aggressive things that your opponents are going to be doing, and it's incredibly hard to knock out of the sky. One of the reasons I've been enjoying playing mono green is that you actually have options to tangle with Amrith at mana parity, which you don't in most other colors. So, but yeah, the place I've been most impressed with Amrith has actually not been in the Is It Dragons list. It's been in some Dimir lists I've seen, or just some more controlling lists. I think the particular play pattern of control my opponent's board a bit, drop Amrith, drop Shadow's Verdict the next turn and bash.
Ooh, yeah.
And then the following turn, you can either Epiphany or you can animate your blue land, and that should be game. Right? Like it's and I think that this is a play pattern that people need to get really used to in this upcoming format, is some combination of like get attacked once with Amrith and then get attacked the next turn with Amrith in the 7/7 land, and that's just game, right? Or maybe it could be an Ebon Death with the 7/7 land. But there are just very, very easy ways, especially if you're playing like an aggro, like let's say you're playing mono red and you drop one or more Shatter Skull Smashings as lands. Like that's going to be game for you if your opponent gets like a sequence like that off on you. So it combos very, very well with some other finishers in the format. And I think that that's one of the things that really puts it over the top.
Yeah, the card is a killer. And I think it's going to be all over the place. And I don't know. This is my, I always said when Yorian's rotating, there will be another. This is one of those cards that might just be another. It might be my card for a long time, because it's hard to play a blue deck without it. I find, I don't want to go too deep into the meta hole until next week, but I find that you need the creatures, you need board presence. So this card is it. I don't think you'll be sad crafting this if anybody is wondering what to do in blue.
So how many crafts? I've been happy running 2 in my list so far. Would you go higher than 2?
I crafted 3 right away, and I haven't regretted Like, I don't think I've gone down to 2 in a single list after playing with 3 for very long. And that includes lists with Goldspan Dragon, where I still ran 3 of this and Goldspan Dragon. That's a bit much. I accept it. But I really do like going Prismari Command into a 5-drop. And if your opponent is a Goldspan Dragon player and you drop this, they're going to have a hard time for a while. Like, it's really good.
That's a really good point. If you play Amrith a turn early, your opponent will have literally no way to interact with it the next turn.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Especially with, if you're playing the new queue and you have cards like Extinction Event out of the format, it's going to be very hard to deal with an early Amrith.
Yep. In fact, there's very few ways to kill big creatures at all, even once you get through the ward problems. Add the ward problem and yeah, like it's a very small number of cards that interact with this thing. Anyway, this card's a rock star. Like this card's probably my favorite card in the set.
You kind of hinted at it, but this is something I wanted to mention anyway, so let's get it out of the way. Power word kill does not target dragons, and that's a really big deal in this set. It's a really big deal. So you want to be thinking about your power word kill a little bit more like you want to put it in the category of like 2-mana spell that kills things that 2-mana spells often kill, right? Like cheaper creatures. There are a number of humdingers that this card does not kill. And so if you get used to thinking of it as like your Heartless Act of the set, it's not really going to be that.
Yeah. If you're slamming 4 of it, you need to be able to justify that because there's going to be a lot of things it misses. A lot.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that makes Amrith especially difficult is that like I can't think of a 2-mana removal spell in this format that actually kills it, except for the one that you need to let your opponent draw a card with. What's that one called?
Baleful Mastery.
Exactly. So if you want to target this on the cheap with a Baleful Mastery, you got to let your opponent draw a card, and that feels real bad. You tap 6 mana, your opponent draws a card, you're down a card. Not a good exchange.
No, you time walked yourself. This one,
exactly.
You really time walked yourself. Another one that people are trying is Flunk, and Flunk works if your opponent is like dumping their hand to try to get the most out of the Amrith draw trigger, but good opponents are just we'll see through that. And I've been in a lot of places where I'm like, well, I'm not going to walk into a Flunk here, so I'm not just going to play my cards pre-combat and hope I get to draw extra with it. It's so easy to just have a counter spell when they tap 6 mana to play a removal spell. Like it's disgusting.
Yeah, so that's really, I think we went a little deep on Amrith, but I think we both do think that it really is one of the best cards in the set. So just keep an eye out for it. You're going to see it a lot, and you're going to have to deal with it a lot.
Yeah. The next card, do you remember if we read this card before?
We did not.
The next dragon is Icing Death. And I'll go ahead and read the first one, but I'm putting you on notice. You're reading the next one.
Okay. All right, I'll get my vocal cards
You
ready.
know what we can do? We can do it by category. I'll read all the dragons that need to be read. You can read like the next category that needs to be read. That way we're not trying
that
to
sounds
remember.
Great.
Yeah.
Let me go ahead and reorder these strategically for a moment.
Nope. You do not touch my Google Doc. Okay. So Icing Death Frost Tyrant is 2 and a white legendary creature dragon. It has flying and vigilance. It's a 4/3, and when it dies, you get this legendary white equipment artifact token. And it says equipped creature gets +2/+0, and whenever equipped creature attacks, tap target creature defending player controls. It's an equip 2, and it's the equipment is, I love this. The equipment is called Icing Death Frost Tongue. You cut out its tongue.
Rip that tongue right out of the dragon.
Cut out its tongue and use it as a weapon. It's so cool.
Brutal.
Yeah, so this is the white mythic dragon in the set. What do you think of this one?
Okay, well, I just have to get it off my chest right off the bat. Icing Death as a name for a dragon, like I'm just having trouble, man. Every time I hear the word Icing Death, I think of like a cupcake.
What?
It's like imagine like you go to your
you're gonna ruin it for everyone.
You go to your local cupcake store, right? And they have like at the top of the menu, they have like their most epic cupcake, and it's like it's like this little cupcake with this massive tower of like frosty, iced goodness on it, right? And it's the icing death because you get freaking diabetes if you eat more than one of them. So the cupcake tyrant, as it's going to be known for me from now on. This looks about as harmless as a cupcake to me. I am not a buyer on this card. I don't think it's the worst thing that you can put in a white deck, but like, is this card that much better than Legion Angel?
It depends on whether or not you want to draw the equipment. Because if you do, it goes in directly into play. So like,
yeah, it's not terrible, right?
Here's the thing. How many Legion Angels can you play in your deck before they're effective? 2 at the most, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So are you going to want to run more than 2 Icing Deaths?
What I'm saying is, if your deck really wants a 4 mana, 4 power flyer play, which many do in this format, then you can only run 2 Legion Angels. You might as well run like 1 or 2 Icing Deaths.
1 or 2 Icing Deaths as well.
Yeah. So that you've got something to block that Goldspan and leave something behind.
It's a role player. I think one of the awkward things about Icing Death is that it gets a lot better if you're playing Halvar. And just like how many 4-drops are you going to want to play, right?
Yeah, we're running low. Yeah.
Exactly. I think so. Okay, so Icing Death, it's obviously got powerful play patterns. I'm not saying that this card can't win games or that it can't be a good top end in a white deck. But just think about how tempo negative your play patterns could be with this. So you drop an Icing Death and your opponent just right away shoots it out of the sky with like a Frostbite. And these red decks, there's a lot of red decks in the format because there's strong red cards to be playing. And so I expect, like Is It Dragon's List, for example. And this card, it just gets owned by an Is It Dragon's List. So like they drop it out of the sky for 1 mana. And then if you then go to equip the equipment, that's more mana that you've sunk into this card. If they have another interaction or just, if your attack doesn't end up being very good or whatever, you're just kind of wasting more time and getting further tempo negative. So I think you need to watch out playing Icing Death.
I think that you're right. I also think the scenario you described, if they have those cards in that spot, there isn't much that the white deck can play that's good. And so therefore you have to eat those removals with your smaller cards. You've got to force them to play them sooner. So I think that this card has a home, but I will tell you, I think that you ruined it. I think that you absolutely cucked this card now that everybody will think of cupcakes. I think you neutered the card. I think Icing Death has no future. He'll never get a date. He will be alone at the prom. You destroyed him.
I wish I could say that I felt sorry, but mono white, taste it.
Moving right along.
Next card.
Even Death. We're going to talk about Even Death Dracolich. I think it is.
Yes.
Yeah. So every night, like when I put in a card, every now and then the wheel spins, but the card doesn't pop up on Scryfall, and my poor little heart just breaks. But anyway, we talked about the Even Death before, right?
Yep.
So how have you played with this card a good amount yet?
I've not played with it. I've played against it. And so far, it has been very underwhelming to me in the role of it being on the battlefield for my opponent. Granted, I'm not sure that my opponents were playing it in the lists that I would have put it in. This is my current theory on the card. This hasn't been tested, but this is just what I'm thinking about. I do not think that Ebon Death is a good match for like a Rakdos list, for example, like a deck that wants to turn sideways or be burning your opponent out. In my opinion, for the Ebon Death to be good, it really does have to go into a very controlling list with lots of removal. So I think that it can be good in a list like that. I don't know if it's better than Imrith in a list like that, for example. But that's kind of what I'm thinking about with Ebon Death. So I think that part of the reason I wasn't impressed is that I think my opponents were just trying it in lists that I personally didn't think were a good match for it.
I agree that I think the best thing to take advantage of with this is the flashness, right? Because so far in this format, I've played a lot against Is It Dragons and a lot against like green and white. So if you're against green and white, the flashness and the tapness, like everything about this is pretty bad unless like you don't want to be playing it until you're closer to parity or getting ahead, which means that most of your win cons would do the job. But against a dragon deck like Prismari Dragons, where if you have counter spells and this flash threat, they don't want to play their Goldspan Dragon in a situation where it will get soul shattered and they get nothing for it, or it will get countered, saw it coming, and they get nothing for it. So when they hit 5 mana, they're going to pass. And when they pass is when you want to try to take advantage and put something on the board, like your Dracolic. And I mean, it sounds fine in theory. It also sounds good. Like there could be these long games where your removal spells also come with a body that you can cast for free. I just find the removal spells so underwhelming and those scenarios so hard to set up because you're just constantly under pressure in this format. The pressure never stops because every deck has creature lands, lots of them. So every single turn, if the opponent wants to, they can be attacking you. So trying to get into the place where you have cheap mana, like 2 mana, that kills target creature, and then you cast your Dracolich from the graveyard is really hard because we already talked about power word kill. It's not hitting much. It isn't getting many jobs done. So there just isn't much cheap removal that you can play that's reliable to hit and then play this again. So it has underwhelmed me as well. I haven't really found I haven't found this to be the card that moves the needle in any of the decks I've tried.
I agree. It's just, it's not that it's not a powerful card. I'm currently thinking of it as like a potential sideboard option for some decks in, once we get to play post-rotation best of 3. I think this card could come in certain matchups. But yeah, otherwise it's been unimpressive, especially with, like, for example, just with cards like another card we'll talk about later in the set, Orca's Prince of Undeath in the set. Someone being able to drop that and just cheaply take out your Draco Lich is pretty bad tempo wise. So yep. Yeah. Hasn't found a home yet. All right, the next mythic dragon that we're going to go to is the red one in the cycle. This is Inferno of the Star Mounts. It's 4 and a red for a 6/6 legendary dragon. It can't be countered. It has flying and haste, and then it has this ultimate fire breathing text for a red. This card gains +1/+0 until end of turn. When its power becomes 20 this way, it deals 20 damage to any target. The ultimate mega fire breathing win more, where you just get to 20 a target and you have a 20 power dragon attacking. The Timmies are rejoicing. Siobhan Dragon has never looked this good. But what do you think of this card? So this is the scenario I'm imagining, which don't try this at home, crafties, it's bad. But this is what you do, right? So you drop your Inferno, you get in for 6. And then next turn you untap. You pump your Inferno up to 9, and then you use a power doubling spell, of which I think we have one in the format currently. I can't remember which one it is.
There's a coin flipping one. Or no, that gives double strike. That gives double strike. We're talking about something like Unleashed Fury, but I don't know if it's
Did Unleashed Fury rotate?
Yeah, it's not in 2022.
Yeah, maybe not. Okay, so maybe we don't have a power doubler, but I think it would be sweet. So you get it up to 9 power, you double it, and then you pump it twice more, and you get it to 20. And then that's a way that you could actually spend your mana in one turn to get the 20 to the face. The funny thing about it is, like, isn't your opponent already dead?
You need to deal 40? Is this not a commander card to you?
Like, are you playing against like Angels in Historic or something? Like, I mean, if this card attacks twice, your opponent is dead. Like,
yeah.
So I have enjoyed playing this card. I have found it to be quite good. Like you said, the removal in the format is pretty expensive, and a lot of it is not very good against dragons. And so I think that this is a totally fine top end in a kind of list that would want to run it. Another thing to note is that this card attacking in tandem with a Goldspan dragon is just absolutely nuts. So if you're able to get into a scenario where like you curve into a Goldspan and then you follow it up with this, I mean, it's a little bit Christmas land, but you put these 2 cards in your deck and it happens, a surprising amount. So yeah, I played 2 of these as a top end in my Is It Dragons list. Inconclusive as to whether it's better than any of the other options, but I certainly ended a lot of games with this card.
I believe it. Did you also run all the all runs epiphanies?
No, I didn't run the full complement. So, I mean, that's a really good question as to which one of those cards is better.
Yeah.
I do think that if you're in the Dragon Mirror, this card is nuts, right? Because like they're gonna have to work really hard to take this card out. Okay.
If they have to take it out. I mean, so my argument with
that's fair.
My argument with the all runs epiphany thing is you pay 6 mana, you slam this, they don't counter it, you take 6, they untap, and you never take another turn.
Yeah, that could happen.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you play your cards right, like if you're playing carefully, you can play this and also leave up mana, right?
It's true.
So I think in the counter spell head to head, I think this does beat Alrund's Epiphany as long as you're smart, right? I mean, you have to like.
I don't know. It doesn't get around the bird. Like gets cut by the bird. Gets chumped. The birds own this card.
The lack of trample is a downside of running the card. But that's what I think. I think if the opponent has good removal and they're ready for this, then it's not going to be that great. But if they're more trying to do a counter spelly thing, if you use your noggin and you take your turns carefully, and especially if you have your own counter magic up, yeah, I think this card can really own your opponents.
Yeah, I think you're right, but I haven't been playing it over Epiphany. I've been playing it in decks that are not blue, which few and far between for CGB, but like Gruul dragons, Rakdos dragons, I almost always have 2 of these. So I don't think you should be sad right now if you open one of these in a pack, but I wouldn't run out and craft them. It's a good card, though. It's a very fun card, and it's a very, very Timmy card with that line of text that just gets people excited. That is probably like a Planeswalker Ultimate. It just never happens. We shouldn't evaluate the card based on the 20 extra damage it might deal, but it's still a cool card.
Yeah, it's basically flavor text. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think if you're not sure about this card, don't craft it. If you're one of these people who, you don't have limitless time or money to just get all of the cards in the set, and you happen to crack one of these, throw it in your deck.
Hey, what do you mean these people?
I just, one of these hypothetical content creators who, draft the set or spend their entire life playing Magic.
He sees right through me.
All right. I mean, I'm implicated too, man. I mean, come on.
All right. So the next is the last in the Mythic Dragon cycle. We're going to talk about the green one, Old Norbone. This is a 5-green, 7/7 flying legendary Mythic Dragon. And whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, create that many treasure tokens. Yeah? You like treasure? I got a card that makes treasure over here. What do you think?
Better or worse than Brass's Bounty?
Better. It's a dragon. Duh. And it's a green card. How could that be worse? I don't understand the question.
All right. So crafties, if you haven't gotten it from the context clues already, this card is either A, just a total meme, or if it does show up somewhere, it'll be in some like unlikely combo deck that tries to kill you in one turn or something like that. But that's how I read Old Norbone. Do you have any ideas around this card that I'm like missing?
The idea I have is, what have you done with Arjuna? You're an imposter. Because Arjuna would have said A of all and then actually had a B of all. And now you said A and didn't even have a B. So you are not the co-host of the Arena Craft podcast.
I'm bouncing. I'm out of here.
We got him.
He's onto me.
We sussed him out. Anyway, it is bizarre to me to say this, but it is possible that there is a cycle where green got the worst card. Not only that,
right?
There's 2. There's actually 2, I think.
It's kind of amazing.
Yeah.
So, they listened to but then they printed some of the best mono green cards we've seen in a long time. So, but yeah, I mean, yeah, this card, I mean, it's fun. I imagine that you're probably going to run some fun deck playing this at some point or another to entertain the viewers. But
I wouldn't be surprised if the whole 2 years of Forgotten Realms came and went, and I never played this card, to be honest.
So, you know what this card reminds me of? I can't remember the name because I don't really care about this card. It was the 7 mana artifact that tapped for like 4 colorless and filtered your mana.
You're
That
talking about, oh
the
God.
Astro something.
I try so hard to come up with
You're,
card
you're really
names.
good at this, and I even stumped you.
Chromatic Ori?
So, yes, Chromatic Aura, you got it.
All right.
Okay, so this for me, this goes into the category of Chromatic Aura cards. The reason I think these cards don't tend to see play is that they generate mana, they cost 7 mana, right? You don't want your enabler to be living in the payoff spot on the curve.
Yeah.
So, like, what are you hoping to achieve after casting your 7 mana spell, which is going to be an even bigger effect?
You really want to know? You really want to know?
I mean,
I want to do the hidden quest on the red dragon.
That's it. Okay, you've got it. You've got it.
I want the 20
power.
power.
Gruel over the tops. So one of the problems with that, though, okay, so here's the good thing about the card is that you can drop it at 7, and if you have other creatures that get in, you immediately get extra treasure.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a good aspect of the card. The dragon itself does not have to attack for you to get the payoff. So that's a way in which the card could have sucked, but that it doesn't. But I still don't really think it's enough to make Old Norbone playable.
Yeah, neither do I. There'll probably be some nutty things you can do it in Commander and Brawl, but for any context of Standard, it's just extra. It's too much extra.
Yeah.
All right,
Meme card.
I'm going to move into some other dragons that are outside the Mythic cycle, but they're cards that are dragon reliant or play with dragons, and covering the dragon category makes a lot of sense. So I want to visit Dragon Turtle, and not just to hear you say it, but to kind of check in on this card. We talked about it last week. It's the 3/5 flash that drags stuff below, does the tap down. Have you gotten to play with Dragon Turtle?
I have. This card so far has been the truth. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Go on.
I think this card is great.
Nice. I've struggled with how much dragon turtling to do versus the all the other options for interactivity. So I'm curious to hear like where you're finding the most success with it.
I think it's good against small creature decks. I also think that it can be a pretty solid answer for Faceless Haven.
Oh, yeah.
So those are 2 places I really like it. Like if you're trying to slow down one of these monocolor, like mono white, mono green, I think those are the 2 best monocolor aggro decks in the format. Yeah, I think Dragon Turtle's a totally fair card to play. Mono green, maybe not so much, because mono green's creatures get pretty big. They can start just attacking through a turtle.
Yeah, that's what I found. By the time I untapped my turtle, they had a 6/6.
Yeah,
that was a very sad dragon turtle.
That's kind of awkward. So I don't necessarily. I still think that this is probably ultimately going to be more of a sideboard card, and I do think it is best against mono red. And spoiler alert, mono red is not a thing in Standard 2022.
Neither are sideboards. So
nope.
Not making a good case.
So maybe this card is not the truth yet. But yeah, I've definitely seen Dragon Turtle be very impressive in a number of situations. I liked it in the Dragon's Mirror. I just found like it was pretty annoying. Like the opponent would play out a Goldspan and you just tap it down. And they didn't even get a treasure out of it. So
yep, that's really good.
Yeah, I think it has its spots.
You know what's not good? When they play an All-Runs Epiphany, so they get like their untap cycle gets ahead of your Dragon Turtle.
That is not good.
That's not good.
that's disappointing.
But what's good is when you play an All-Runs Epiphany and your Dragon Turtle is untapped before their creature has gone through its lockdown turn. So
yeah, or if you Epiphany and then untap and play a Dragon Turtle, tap down their blocker, and now they're just they're hurting.
Yep, it has its moments for sure, and the 3/5-ness is really hard to kill. And there aren't that many flash cards, I would say, like ways to kind of both hold up an answer threat combo and a counter spell. So I've enjoyed the turtle. I think it's a decent card. I wouldn't like 2 is a number I come back to pretty often, if that makes sense.
I think it'll find a home, and I agree. I think it's more of a niche player. But this is the kind of card where, like, I really do believe, like, for example, if you're playing in the regular standard queue right now and you're playing a blue deck, I would definitely consider running this in the sideboard for mono red, because like this card owns those current mono red lists pretty hard, I think.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So I'm going to jump to another dragon related card, the Orb of Dragonkind. Have we done this one on the show?
Yeah, we did read it last week. Mm-hmm.
All right. So the mana rock that also hit a dragon, looking at your top 7. I'm going to start on this card.
Yeah.
I'm done with it. I'm off it. Like,
yeah, I was kind of off it too.
Yeah.
I was kind of off it too. So why did you not like it?
It didn't happen to me, but I played against people. I played a game where somebody sacrificed 2 Orbs of Dragonkind and whiffed on both.
And whiffed. Yeah. That's why I kept whiffing, dude.
Yep.
Like 7 cards, man.
7 cards, and you can't have a dragon. Yeah.
Come on.
And dragons are... It's not like other types like humans or non-humans in your Winota or elves, where like you're really filling your curve with them. Like dragons live at the top end. They live at the top end, and you can only have so much of that. And that means that the whiff potential just gets so high. And I also just found that way too often this card like died to Prismari Command. And there was like just so many times also you just needed anything out of this other than what it does. If it just tapped for a colorless mana, it would have been exactly. It would have been so good. You need to activate your Hall of the Storm Giant or whatever. But you've got this freaking Orb of Dragonkind sitting there doing nothing. I'm completely off this card at this point.
So everything you said, I agree with. The main issue I had with Orb of Dragonkind was just that if you didn't have a 4-drop dragon in your hand, you kind of felt like you wasted a turn.
Yes.
So the ideal thing to do is you go turn 2 Orb of Dragonkind, turn 3 4-drop dragon, right? If you do that, you feel like a boss, like you're just way ahead, especially if you drop a Galazeth Prismari, you get to hopefully untap the next turn and you have just so much mana available to you. So that was like the high case of using Orb of Dragonkind. If you didn't have that, it basically felt like taking turn 2 off, even if it let you cast your Goldspan dragon on turn 4 instead of turn 5. I still didn't feel like it was worth it having given up turn 2 to play it.
It's a good meme card if you're trying to play 5-color dragons in this format or something like that, but otherwise I'm not touching it again.
Yeah, I think you do need, like, if you have a deck that has a critical mass of cheaper dragons, then I think Orb of Dragonkind is going to be good, but they're basically going to need to print even more dragons into standard for that to be the case.
But onto a card that I'm like playing all over the place, quite honestly, that I'm happy to put in just about everything, and that is Dragon's Fire. So, Dragon's Fire. Have we read this on the show? I don't think so. I'm going to go ahead and read it. 1 in a red instant. As an additional cost to cast this spell, you may reveal a dragon card from your hand or choose a dragon you control. Like, if you never played in cons this line of text, it's easy to forget that this is an either or option. So I'm going to say it again. You can reveal a dragon from your hand or choose a dragon you control. So Dragon's Fire deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker, no matter what. But if you revealed a dragon card or chose a dragon card when you cast the spell, you get to deal damage equal to the dragon's power to the creature or planeswalker instead. Cool. Like a 2-mana instant speed removal spell that on its own hits like a Frostbite or a Lightning Strike or something like that. But
which is totally precedented,
totally
right?
Fine.
We play cards like that all the time.
Scorching Dragonfire, Fire Prophecy. We expect a little upside though. We've been conditioned now that we need more. But I don't remember a more that gave you like conditional options to scale up to hit such large things. Because if you have a Desert Doom in your hand, the blue one, and you can shoot for 5 with 2 mana at instant speed, you're going to kill most of the planeswalkers. You're going to kill most of the creatures that you come up against, including other dragons. So it can hit other dragons. It's not like Glorybringer either. That was something else that I think maybe flavor-wise, they could have put non-dragon on this and made it unplayable, but this does hit all the things. I think this card is amazing, and I'm running 4 of it a lot.
Yeah. I started with I think 3 in my dragons list, and after playing the format a little bit, I was like easy 4 of. Like I'd run 5, you know.
Yeah.
Card is fantastic. And yeah, it definitely does incentivize you to play Immerith. And I mean, I even had some pretty sweet scenarios where I had the red one
Yep.
and hit
Inferno.
for hit for 6, and it was freaking amazing. So yeah, this card is great. Run it.
100% into Dragon's Fire. So
Yep.
that's a slam dunk. Onto one that I don't know. This card plays a really interesting role, in my opinion, in the meta for 2022. And it's a card I didn't even see on the spoiler. Like I played the 5-color dragon deck, and I didn't even play this card for a while because I didn't even know it existed. This is Temple of the Dragon Queen. This is an uncommon land. And it says, as Temple of the Dragon Queen enters the battlefield, you may reveal a dragon from your hand. Temple of the Dragon Queen enters the battlefield tapped unless you revealed a dragon card this way, or you control a dragon. Important text again. As it enters the battlefield, choose a color, and you can tap for 1 mana of the chosen color. This is like a pathway that can be any color and enters the battlefield untapped as long as you have a dragon in hand or on the battlefield. I think it's really important because if you are running a color combination without snarls, like say Gruul, playing tapped lands is so bad.
Brutal.
But if you can find 8 to 10 dragons for your deck, this really makes your mana incredibly better.
Yeah, I found it to be a player. I ran it in my Is It Dragons deck and was very happy with it. I found that I either always had a dragon to turn it on, or I could just play it turn 1 or whatever. I could fit it into my curve. And especially because the mana is so horrendous in the standard 2022, they're definitely going to need to print a good cycle of lands in the next set to really get multicolor decks back on the menu. But Temple of the Dragon Queen filled in that slot for me. Now, my deck was quite dragon focused, and I agree with you. You do need to have a critical mass of dragons. So you need to be running like all 4 of your Goldspans, a couple of Galazeth Prismaris, couple of Emirates, and like the Dragon Shark or whatever. And if
Dragon Turtle.
Dragon Turtle.
Dragon Turtle.
Dude, isn't Dragon Shark sweet though?
I'm sure it's coming. It's got to be.
I kind of wish. It's only a matter of time. So because I had all of those cards in my deck, it was no problem. But I think that's the only question: is how many dragons are you running? If there was a more playable, like a better than a Snarl dual land that I could play in its place in my Izzet deck, I probably would have run that instead. And it does hurt to have to play like this and Pathways in your Snow deck, because you do frequently have to wait longer than turn 3 to get your Frostbites online.
Yep.
So that was kind of a downside, but overall I found that in a dragon heavy deck it was definitely worth it.
I think it's pretty sweet. I know that there's the rare cycle of creature lands, so it's not like we are getting a discount, but I like that Dungeon Descent is a rare and basically unplayable, and that Temple of the Dragon Queen is an uncommon, and it's actually pretty staple,
Let's go.
Let's do it.
Let's go. This makes up a little bit for base camp.
I'm not over base camp.
Oh, one of the biggest disappointments of recent years. Anyway,
speaking of the biggest disappointments of recent years, we're going to move into a category called Planeswalkers, and I use that transition because these are not War of the Spark Planeswalkers, and this is not Oko anymore.
No, we are not. We're not in Eldraine anymore. We are not in War of the Spark anymore. So let me get these pulled up here. Okay. So I am tasked with reading this cycle, and I'm going to start off with card I've been very unimpressed with so far. Grandmaster of Flowers, 2 white, legendary planeswalker Bahamut. These are all at Mythic, by the way. Bahamut enters with, 3 loyalty. As long as Grandmaster of Flowers has 7 or more loyalty counters on him, he is a 7/7 dragon god creature with flying and indestructible. +1, target creature without first strike, double strike, or vigilance can't attack or block until your next turn. +1, search a library and or graveyard for a card named Monk of the Open Hand, reveal it, and put it into your hand. If you search a library this way, shuffle. And that is it, my friends. 2 +1s. That's all he wrote. So yeah, I'm just gonna hand this one over to you, CGB. Have you been impressed at all with Grandmaster of Flowers?
I actually really like this card, and okay. It's tough because I haven't played a ton of Standard, but when I played regular Standard, I thought this card was a lot of what I needed. A card advantage engine that keeps producing threats, that when it hits 7, it can be a game-ending threat on its own because it can just swing right in, hit the opponent. So there's a lot of like cool stuff with it. The monks I found a lot better than I expected. The ability to search the graveyard to get them is really nice. But I think in a dragon meta, it's in the wrong place. Because this thing, there is no good use for this card if your opponent has Goldspan Dragon in their deck. No. Like you can't get it down and protect it realistically. You can't. It's just gonna take a dragon to the face one way or another. There's like almost no good use for the card in that situation, because even if you play it for value and to absorb a hit, all you got out of it was a 1/1, and that's just not good. Like, this card needs to be on the battlefield for a few turns. It's especially good if you're already being aggressive and they played a card that they hoped would block and stabilize, right? And then you can play Grandmaster of Flowers and plus on it and keep the aggression going, and then the next turn you go fetch another creature. But the problem is when it's a Desert Doom, you can't plus on it because of that freaking ward. It's a disaster. So in 2022, it's kind of bizarre that it's kind of a no man's land format, because you can't sideboard it. You can't take it out of your deck where it's bad. So I think in 2022, as much as I love the card, I think you're supposed to run Icing Death and Legion Angel, because you create this flying board presence. So their Goldspan Dragon crashes into it and dies, or you can get a counter on it with a Luminarch Aspirant or Sky Maul, and it can swing through a Desert Doom. Grandmaster of Flowers can't do any of that. And I think it doesn't pass the test because of it in 2022.
Okay, I figured out why you like this card, CGB.
Yeah?
It looks like you.
What? No.
It looks like you.
It does not. Do not say that.
Yeah, no. Look at that hair, man.
Nope. I am not I'm not some flower-loving hippie. Nobody's giving me no Grandmaster. We have to stop this line of dialogue. We have to shut down this podcast. I will not listen to this.
Get this imposter co-host off this podcast.
Okay, no, we're not going there. I am not the Grand freaking Master of Flowers.
So I think that this card is a classic example of win more. I think this card plays well when you're ahead and is pretty bad when you're behind. And don't see the resemblance. Y'all really need to watch the video version of this podcast, by the way. So I think like there are going to be games where you play this and like you're doing well and your opponent isn't smashing the door down and beating your face up, and you're going to be like, wow, that was really cool. And then I ended the game with this freaking 7/7 indestructible flying creature, and it was epic. And then you're going to have games that I've been having against this, where your opponent plays like turn 2 pack leader into turn 3 troll into turn 4, Esika's chariot. And you're looking at your like 4 mana, 3 loyalty planeswalker that fetched up a 1/1 that you couldn't cast the turn that you put it into play. And you're just not feeling great about life.
Nope.
So I'm not saying that there isn't a potential deck that this card could fit into at some point. Like, it has potential. It's definitely not dead. It's definitely not as bad as some of the other planeswalkers we're going to read on this list. But yeah, so far I have not seen a good home for this card.
I think the thing I need to try with it's absurdly better on the play than the draw. Like absurdly better. And I think what I need to do is break that parity in a way. So I want to try this in like green white with mana elves with some ramp, so I can get it down early before it's worried about dying to Goldspan Dragon and before the opponent has like a super solid foothold. And then I think both modes could matter. But I think in regular mono white in this format, you need the flyers. You need the flying creature presence.
So I think planeswalkers need to pass the oh crap test, and especially planeswalkers that cost 4 or more mana, right? When your opponent resolves it, do you feel that like drop in the pit of your stomach, like, oh God, oh God, why? What will I ever have to do to deal with this planeswalker? And I don't feel that way when this one comes down.
Dude, there are two things that have to pass the oh crap test: new underwear and this card.
And only one of them consistently does
depending on the underwear.
Okay, speaking of underwear, let's move on to our next planeswalker here, Mordekainen. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, and they're going to tell me in the comments. For blue, legendary planeswalker Mordekainen comes in with 5 loyalty. +2, draw 2 cards, then put a card from your hand on the bottom of your library. -2, create a blue dog illusion creature token with this creature's power and toughness are each equal to twice the number of cards in your hand. Ooh. And -10, exchange your hand and library, then shuffle. You get an emblem with you have no maximum hand size. So apart from the fact that I just know you're going to try this Planeswalker CGB, because why would you not? I think, okay, so Mordekainen is clearly a very powerful Planeswalker, right? This is clearly a piece of cardboard, which if you just got to choose to untap with it, you would be ultra stoked. I think I have not seen this card on the battlefield once yet. And I think part of the reason is just that, people would probably rather play an Amrith, or that, there's just kind of other things that people would rather currently do in the format. So Mordekainen, I just realized it's Mordekainen. Okay, so I already am improving my pronunciation here. It's a little bit of like a Professor Onyx, right? Where it's a 6-mana planeswalker that does strong things. And the question is just, can you kind of plausibly get it out? And can it then do some stuff that is game affecting enough? But I mean, just like on the face of it, plussing up to 7 loyalty and drawing 2 cards, I mean, yeah, that's awesome. Making a blue dog, which is going to be like probably a pretty big creature, right? Like this minuses to make like a 4/4 or a 6/6 or something, maybe even an 8/8. So I mean, that's like, okay, I think that this card pretty decisively passes the protecting itself test. And then I mean, if this thing like makes 2 illusions, you probably win the game, right? So I don't know. What are you thinking about this card, CGB?
Number one, if any, to everyone out there who wants to come in here and judge either of us on how to pronounce made up words, just shove it. Who's to say it's not Mordekainen or whatever I want to call it? I'm going to call it what I want to call it. Who says you get to be right? Huh?
It's your imagination, man.
That's right.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't care. I don't care if you've taught, like, whispered this person's name in dark corners with your D&D pals in mom's basement for 20 years. I'm going to call it whatever I want, and I'm going to get Arjun to spit water while I do it. Just, I had to. The D&D nerds are going hard in my comments on my pronunciation of things, and I'm going right back. I show no weakness, man. I show no weakness.
Oh man, you just critical hit, man. You just roll a natural 20 on those guys. Taste it. So let's go.
This card. I want to talk. This gives me a chance to remind everybody about something about 2022. It doesn't have Brazen Borrower. Yes. Because it took me a while to figure out. I'm not kidding. It took me a while to figure out why every time I make a dog, it didn't die. I was like, I have been conditioned, and I didn't even realize how or why. But I've been conditioned for years now that if I'm going to make a token, it's just going to die. So what's the big deal about making 1 token? You need at least 2 birds for that to be relevant. You need 2 tokens, okay? And this thing making 1 token, when I read that line of text, I was like, this card isn't going to do it. That's not enough. This card can -2 twice because it starts with 5 loyalty. So you basically get 2 of those dogs whose power and toughness are equal to double the cards in your hand. Like you said, often a 4/4, often a 6/6, reasonably often an 8/8. Like 2 of those. That's really good. And Skyclave Apparition doesn't hit it. because it doesn't hit tokens. Frostbite doesn't kill things that big, and Brazen Borrower is nowhere to be seen. So like that part actually matters. That said, this card is competing with the top end of top ends, which I still believe is Alrund's Epiphany, and I think it lives there until it doesn't anymore. Alrund's Epiphany is so good with the dragons, Goldspan, and Isilagar? I just keep saying Desert Doom.
Whatever it is.
It's so good with D&D, the Desert Doom.
Imrith.
There it is. It's so good.
I think the red one's the Isilgar. Anyway, whatever.
Yeah, whatever. It's so good with, like, Alrund's Epiphany is so good with Amrith and so good with Goldspan that is the line. If you need a deck that doesn't want to play those, and then maybe this card is good. And I think that it's a good card competing for a spot that doesn't have, there's just not enough room for all of it. So maybe this should be a one of in my Izzet deck. Maybe it should be a one of in my Dimir deck. It's definitely a one of and sometimes a two of in my Azorius deck. But yeah, it's the competition that's holding it back. But it's better than people realize because those dogs usually don't die.
Yeah. Yeah, this card is just very, very, very powerful. Okay, so we already read Lolth Spider Queen, so I'm not going to read that one again.
It was about 12 years ago.
12 years ago.
12 episodes, maybe.
I haven't seen this one on the battlefield either. I think, like we said before, this card has potential, but the shell for it doesn't exist. So I think for now, you can safely just ignore it.
I'm holding on to hope in a mono black control deck and in a green black sacrifice like Magecraft Drain deck, but I haven't tested those decks. But yeah, card isn't showing up very much.
Yep. Now on to which I think might be the worst card in the cycle, Zariel, Archduke of Avernus, 2 red for loyalty Planeswalker Zariel. +1, creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain haste until end of turn. 0, create a 1/1 red devil creature token with when this creature dies, it deals 1 damage to any target. And then -6, you get an emblem with at the end of the first combat phase on your turn, untap target creature you control. After this phase, there is an additional combat phase. So the question I want to ask you, Covert Go Blue, is this Planeswalker has 3 abilities on it. Do any of them make you smile inside?
Yes, all of them, because it's a red card that sucks.
Okay, all right. We got there. We did it. Yeah, if by smiling it's because it's a joke, then I agree with you. It's hard for me to imagine this card showing up. First of all, the +1 is just not that great. You like to be able to just drop a Planeswalker and immediately plus it and have it actually do something, especially a 4-mana Planeswalker. This basically doesn't. Maybe if you've already gone wide, that +1/+0 buff will mean something. But this is another classic example, like Grandmaster of Flowers, of a card that plays well when you're already crushing and is just totally abysmal when you're losing. And yes, extremely bad on the draw, especially in an aggro matchup. So it's hard. This is the problem. It's hard for me to see where this card fits in. Do you have any thoughts about like what archetype would actually want to play this?
Somewhere that's going to somehow cheat a sweet battlefield and then give it haste. It better not involve protecting this card because it doesn't protect itself very well. Super awkward against any kind of dragon, but especially Goldspan Dragon, because when you play it, you want a 0 so that you get something out of it. But if you don't plus, you're going to get attacked and it's just gone. I haven't seen the card making an impact, and I don't expect it to.
There's only one thought I've had around this card is that it could like maybe do something cool in a Transmogrify deck. So
okay,
I'm reaching here. So for example, let's say you get this down, you make a token.
Sure.
Let's say that in some Christmas land, both this and the token live until your next turn. Then you can Transmogrify the token and give whatever you summoned up haste. And yeah, that's going to be really awesome, right?
I don't think that's a terrible idea. I think that's
Yeah.
that's not bad. I might try that sometime, but
It's an idea. That's the only place that I see this going.
I have to play standard though.
You do have to play regular standard, which is kind of a bummer. So no, he's off it. He's off it. All right. And then the final Planeswalker in the cycle, Eliwick Tumblestrom, 2 green. For loyalty, legendary Planeswalker, Eliwick. +1, venture into the dungeon. -2, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card from among them and put it into your hand. If it's legendary, you gain 3 life. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. -7, you get an emblem with creatures you control, have trample and haste, and get +2/+2 for each differently named dungeon you've completed. I'm going to hand this one right over to you, Covert Go Blue. And I also think this could be a good opportunity for us to just start talking about venture, right, in this format, because it's the first time we've seen it. So I'll kind of put that on a little tray and pass it your way.
All right. Yeah, I was going to swap that category so it led right into venture, because why not? We've got a venture Planeswalker here. And this is what I meant when I said there might be 2 cycles where green got the worst card. Red is trying though.
It's trying hard.
Red is trying. Red might have gotten there with being worse, but Eliwick Tumblestrom is not a bad card. By design. What's bad, unfortunately, what's underpowered is the quality of the venture cards that are available to help Eliwick Tumblestrom do work, because it's really hard to play decent venture cards, then drop Eliwick and use the +1 to get really deep into the dungeon so that the +1 really hits. And that has been my experience so far with the card, is that there's too much. There's almost no impact at the early stages of the dungeon. The middle of the dungeon is not quite up to par for what you would expect your Planeswalker to do. A lot like the +1/+0 in haste or the devil of the red one. You're like hitting +1 to make a treasure. You're hitting +1 to make a 1/1 goblin token, something like that. And then when you hit the late stages of the dungeon, you just don't usually get there before something terrible has happened to you. So let's use Eliwick, and we're going to transition right into venture. You cool with me just going right into it?
Take it away, man. Take it away.
This is the limited mechanic of the set, because they, in my opinion, just didn't give us enough venturing into the dungeon at solid rate to build good curves and to build cards that really affect the battlefield, are hard to interact with, and get the job done. Now, I've got a list of the venture cards we're going to talk about, and it might sound a little negative, but I think we should bring up what actually is close to working. Not because they're going to give us more venture cards. They probably won't. This is probably all we have. But the brewers out there who love this mechanic, I want to point you to a few cards if you can make it work. Because there are some people who are not going to believe us no matter what we say. And and God bless them. They've got good hearts. Go in there. If you break the format and you make venture absolutely rock, good for you. I'll be happy for you. I really will. So, Eliwick. Okay, why is Eliwick one of the only green cards that's a good venture card is also a pretty big issue.
Exactly. There's just not great support in green. I mean, there's that one green. Let's see. What's that card called? I don't even think we have it on our list. So there's a green 3-drop, which ventures whenever you cast another creature.
Oh, yeah. It's legendary, has ward. I thought about putting that one on our list. And then I tried to think of a single good thing I could say about it. Varys.
Exactly.
Varys Silvery Moon Ranger, the 1 green 3/3 with reach and ward 1. Is a human elf ranger. Whenever you cast a creature or planeswalker, venture into the dungeon. This triggers once each turn. And whenever you complete a dungeon, create a 2/2 wolf token. Would be great if you were completing dungeons often, but it needs to survive a turn, because often you can't double spell. The double green is actually really rough on the mana. And I think the biggest thing I could say for that card is that ward 1 is not enough. It still dies to a frostbite for just 2 mana, or a dragon's fire for 3 mana. It just doesn't get you there. It's really hard to get this card to survive.
Well, which is, I think, one of Eliwick's main issues is just that you want the turn that you drop Eliwick for that venture to really hit, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're able to like drop Eliwick, venture, and make the 4/4 Death Touch token in the same turn, then yeah, you're doing it. Your deck is sweet.
Yep.
But I just don't see the support to actually get us there.
Especially in green.
In green, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's, you have like 2 double green cards that you need to curve into, but then the early part of your curve is going to need to be some other combination of colors. So yeah, it just doesn't quite line up.
So the venture cards I have on the list that might be able to create a good curve and give you some venturing. The first one I have is Yuan T. Malison. I get Malison from Game of Thrones.
Malison.
Yuan T. Malison. 1 and a blue for a 2/1 Snake Rogue rare, and this card can't be blocked as long as it's attacking alone. And whenever it deals combat damage to a player, venture into a dungeon. So you have a rogue, and it's a 2/1 for 2, and it can't be blocked, and you get a little bit of value on connect. It's a start.
It can do the thing.
Yeah,
it can definitely do the thing.
Yeah.
So it's not like a flagrantly embarrassing 2-drop.
I think that where you want to be is you got to get this down, and then you have to protect it. So fortunately, blue has some cards that'll do that, some of which we'll talk about coming up, and cards like counterspells, come to mind. But I think that is one way that you can try to navigate the dungeons, is to make this card early and then defend it. And that plays along with another card I'm going to talk about in a second. But if you can create a venturing threat and then guard it in the way that the mono blue tempo deck did before, you will probably make your way through a few dungeons.
Yeah, I saw Croakies do some good work with this in a mono blue deck. Didn't seem terrible.
Nice. Well, that is a hot take review from Arjun. It didn't seem terrible. That's
Didn't seem terrible.
I'm guessing I can move right along.
You can.
All right. I'm gonna stay on this team on this blue kind of protect it line really quick, and I'm gonna mention Fly. So Fly is. I half expected it to be a creature insect. It's kind of funny to me that we now have a card that's just called Fly. I also made a joke about this when it was revealed, because they were going through this you see a guard on watch phase, and a lot of us were like, what are these card names? And I my joke name for this was, you find yourself to be flying.
Yeah, you find yourself in midair. That's awesome.
Thanks. But this is 1 blue enchantment aura, enchant creature. It's an uncommon. Enchant creature has flying, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, venture into the dungeon. It's kind of sweet that your mono blue deck can have evasion and then also have a value for hitting. So it's like part of the Curious Obsession baked into one, if that makes sense, because you always need evasive creatures for your Curious Obsession. But this is still a long time. Like, it's a lot of work to get a Curious Obsession's worth of value out of this card. But it ties into what I was saying with the blue protected theme.
Well, so this joins a proud tradition of, like, some pretty proven archetypes, right? Like, this plays well in an auras archetype. I think this is a fine card to consider in like a I'm already forgetting the name of all the companions now.
Oh, good. That must feel nice.
Right? It's been so great. The Loris. Okay, so I think, like, when I first saw this card, I was like, could this be a player in like the Historic Azorius Auras deck, for example? So I think that Fly could definitely play a role in decks like that. I don't know if it's better than other existing options, but that was the first place that my mind went when I saw a card like Fly. I think it's a totally fine Loris include. But yeah, I think that you're right. There's this kind of like proud pedigree of just getting some blue deck, suiting up some creatures with some nice pants, and then protecting them. And I totally think Fly could be a part of that plan.
All right. The next one is a rare, and I do think we read this back when dungeons were first spoiled, which is Nadara's Selfless Paladin. But just a quick rundown is it's a 3-mana 3/3 in white with vigilance, and whenever it attacks or enters the battlefield, you get to venture. And I think that's really cool and kind of key that you get it both on the ETB and on the venturing. And then it has text that other creatures get an anthem, +1/+1, as long as you've completed a dungeon. I found any text that says as long as you've completed a dungeon to be flavor text.
For the most part.
Yeah.
For the most part. Yeah.
It's been kind of silly to me. Have you played with Nadar?
I've not played with it. I've played against it. This card is definitely not bad. So this is actually a key player in the only venture deck which I have been at all impressed with or has made any impression on me. And that is Orzhov Venture in Standard 2022. So I've seen this card put in some good work along with another card that I put on this list, Triumphant Adventurer.
So Triumphant Adventure is a white and a black 1/1 Death Touch human knight at rare. As long as it's your turn, Triumphant Adventurer has first strike, and whenever Triumphant Adventurer attacks venture into the dungeon, I'm gonna just say it and then throw it back to you for your piece. This is like the only card that's ventured on me multiple times.
Yes.
Like, yeah.
Yes. So that's in a creature matchup, I found this card to be incredibly annoying. You can't block it. You can never block it, right? And it's cheap, so it does come down pretty early. And if you don't have removal for it, yeah, it can venture a lot. And I've had scenarios in which my opponent managed to stick multiple of these and just keep attacking. And they can get you in a tough spot where you're forced to deal with their bigger creatures to keep up. So for example, you can, or just their more impactful creatures, right? You can do stuff like you get one of these down, and then let's say you follow it up with a Luminarch Aspirant, right? And then you don't really want to use your removal spell on the adventurer because you need to handle the aspirant. Or maybe, they're playing an aggressive deck, so they start clocking you with some spellbinders or something. And so you get into this space where this is just like, it's basically the one that gets away. It's the creature you have to let live. There's always, in an aggro deck, there's always that one creature that you need to like leave on the battlefield. And this card ends up being that a surprising amount of the time. So I have multiple times lost to this deck playing mono green, which I think is one of the best decks in the format. And it's just because of that. Yeah. And so this deck does actually somewhat consistently complete a dungeon. It's probably worse against like CGB style decks that are just very, very good at handling creatures. But I have found this deck to be a player. And within that deck, I think Nadar was a totally fine 3-drop.
Yep. A curve with Adventurer and Nadar I found to be the closest thing to Turbo Dungeon, if you want to call it that. Yeah.
Totally. The deck also that I have seen probably plays like a couple copies of Acererak. So let's are you reading? You're reading, right?
I'm trying. Acererak. Okay, sure. I'll call it that. So the Acererak the Arclich is Arclich. That's another one I'm getting a hard time for. I think that lick is appropriate in some places, but they want lich. Okay, fine.
It's a made up word, dude. You can pronounce it how you want.
So I just put a hard
lick
K
away,
on there.
CGB.
Hard lick. Arclich. It just sounds naughty, man. That's what it is. They're triggered. They're scared. They're scared of accepting this. All right, 2 and a black, 5/5 mythic legendary creature zombie wizard. When this enters the battlefield, if you haven't completed Tomb of Annihilation, which is the shortest dungeon, return this card to the owner's hand and venture into the dungeon. So if you haven't completed Tomb, this is 3 mana venture, basically, and you get nothing left over. But once you complete Tomb, it's a 3 mana 5/5, but you don't venture that turn. So when this card attacks, for each opponent, you create a 2/2 black zombie creature token unless that player sacrifices a creature. So you've been running into this card? Is it doing anything to you?
It's inconclusive, but in that specific Orzhov deck, I did lose to it once. I think so. Tomb of Annihilation is actually a good choice for an aggressive Orzhov Venture deck because here's what happens. they venture once, each player loses a life. So you lose a life and then you lose another life from the attacking triumphant adventurer. Then next turn, if they venture again, you're almost certainly going to lose 2 more life because you don't want to discard a card, right? And then the next turn, you're almost certainly going to lose 2 more life in Sandfall Cell because you don't want to sacrifice an artifact, creature, or a land. And so what happens is that the Tomb of Annihilation ends up dealing 5 extra damage to you. And then the 4th venture is Cradle of the Death God. And so you'll end up in these situations where you've already taken a little bit more damage from the Triumphant Adventurers and the Tomb of Annihilation than you really wanted to. And then they'll end up around the same time, they'll end up with a 4/4 Death Touch creature and a Serarak on the battlefield. And you can have these curves where, like, suddenly they've completed Tomb of Annihilation and you're just staring down this really formidable board from your opponent. So it can, like, the deck can definitely reach this crescendo on like turn 5 or something, where suddenly you're like, wow, I'm so far behind in this game.
Yeah. So if you want to be the ultimate dungeon venturer, like, really, have you considered playing this card in Historic with Omniscience?
I have not considered that, actually.
All right, think it through. Just consider that you don't have to ever do the Tomb of Annihilation. You can just keep completing the other 2 dungeons.
That's actually kind of sweet.
That's just game over, right? Because you make
that's pretty
infinite
much
treasures. Yeah, infinite treasures, infinite 1/1s, infinite draw 3, play a card for free. Oh,
that's sweet, dude. That's actually really sweet.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
You just need 10 mana, dude.
Like, this card's definitely weird, and it may end up being an oddity that no one really plays, but I've seen it do work, and it is powerful. So, yeah. I think, anyway, I'm not sure that the Orzhov list that I was talking about is tier 1, but I think it could, it could be tier 2 or tier 3, and I think you could win some games with it in standard 2022.
I think you'll win some games. I don't think it's a tier deck. I've just had I've farmed the hell out of everybody who's brought that to me, and I built it, and I think I played like a game, and I was like, nope, not for me. So
I think that there are some matchups that are like don't fare as well against it.
Okay. The last venture card I want to mention is Dungeon Map, and this is 3 mana for an artifact at uncommon that taps for a colorless. And for 3, you can tap it and venture into the dungeon, activate only as a sorcery. And I want to mention this because I think if there's a card that you just put in a deck that like kind of gets this value from the fact that you have access to dungeons no matter what, but it doesn't take up any slots in your deck, like it's just free value on the table. I think this is it. I think when you think about mana rocks, you think about they've discovered that you can sacrifice your mana rock to draw a card. They've had a few that have done that recently. Something Relic from Ikoria is one of them. But yeah, like there's Hedron Archive is an artifact that makes mana, but you can sacrifice it to draw cards. But they figured out that if you have your ramp, and then your ramp also for pretty much any amount of mana just happens to draw a card as well, then it also becomes like this late game inevitability engine on its own, and there's not much downside or cost to playing it, so they don't make those cards. This is close because if you have nothing else to do and you ramped and you didn't get there, now you can venture into a dungeon with your mana and get some extra value. I don't know what decks, like 3 is a tough spot on the curve because there's so many good cards, and right now there's Cultivate and Standard. But I have a feeling that there are ramp decks that should just play Dungeon Map instead of another like ramp spell. And it might not be terrible.
Did they have to put that sorcery speed clause on this card?
Oh, yeah.
Because that's just killing me, dude.
Nobody can venture into a dungeon at instant speed. It's unheard of. It's absolute madness.
Not even a snake rogue, I guess. I just like... I don't think this card would have been too good if instant speed were on it, and I think it just would have opened up a lot more options for playing Dungeon Map. So I'm kind of bummed about that.
Driz and should have been able to venture into a dungeon at instant speed. If anyone could, he could.
I agree.
All right.
I agree.
Next category?
Next category. All right, treasure themed cards. I'm glad you handed me this one because I've definitely been enjoying watching the treasure play out in this format. And initial results are, yeah, I think you can be treasuring. I don't know if it again is like really tier. But I've seen these treasure decks do good stuff, and especially in combination with some of the other cards on this list. So for example, yeah, we've already read some of these cards before, so I'm gonna just kind of briefly go over them again. So Force One Paladin is the 1/1 for 1 black mana that you can tap 1 and a black to pay 1 life and create a treasure token. You can also pump creatures and give them Death Touch. This card has definitely done stuff in matchups that I've played. Some decks I think have been not as well set up to play it as others have, but I have found that threat of Death Touch has been surprisingly annoying to play against. And I've also found so I think Rakdos Treasure is definitely a thing that you can be doing. Another card which a number of people have been higher on than I imagined, which seems to be doing some things, is Kalain. So Kalain, Reclusive Painter. This is red-black for a 1/2 legendary creature, human elf bard at uncommon. When Kalain, Reclusive Painter enters the battlefield, create a treasure token. So that's very nice. This is basically your Rakdos Innkeeper, but this card is better than the Innkeeper. Other creatures you control enter the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on them for each mana from a treasure spent to cast them. So right off the bat, this card can just help you do things like, for example, cast a Goldspan Dragon on turn 4, and it comes in as a 5/5. Yeah, that's really sweet. But where this deck starts to get pretty filthy is in combination with another card, which you put in a different category, but I want to bring it up now because sure. I think this card is very good in this deck, which is Orcus. So
it probably doesn't go in that category I put it in anyway, so go for it.
Yep. Okay, so Orcus, Prince of Undeath. This card is real. This is X2 black red. So it costs a minimum of 4 mana, and then you can pay X mana on top of that. This card is a legendary creature demon at rare. It is a 5/3. It's also a flying trampler. When Orcus, Prince of Undeath, enters the battlefield, choose one. You can choose each other creature gets -X until end of turn. You lose X life, so use it as a little board wipe. Or you can choose number 2, return up to X target creature cards with total mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. They gain haste until end of turn. Okay, so go ahead, CGB.
I didn't say anything. I was letting you do your thing.
All right. I heard something. Anyway, okay, so Orcus, here's what you need to know about Orcus. Orcus gets really insanely good when you have a lot of treasure on the battlefield, and that is because it lets you have a lot more flexibility about how much you can spend X for. The other thing that you can do is, like, let's say you've resolved a couple of Kalains over the course of a game and they've died. You can bring a Kalain and maybe like another treasure generating creature back from the graveyard and then generate additional treasure when they enter the battlefield and then do other stuff with the treasure. If you also have a Goldspan Dragon in play, then you can just start to generate filthy amounts of mana, and you can just have these epic turns where you spent like 16 mana and took like 4 game actions and just killed your opponent in 1 turn. So I think that like some Rakdos deck running Orcus and Kalain and Goldspan Dragon and maybe the Paladin, I don't know. I think that there's a package that you can fill out there, which is going to be surprisingly strong.
I agree with all of that. I wanted to say that thanks to Kalain, I played a 9/9 Goldspan Dragon.
Oh, heck yeah, dude.
Don't ask me how it came to this, but it did.
That is epic.
And I remember I hadn't really read the card correctly because it gets... So other creatures you control enter the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on them for each mana from a treasure spent to cast the spell. So... Yeah. I mean, if you have 4 treasures and you spend them all on the Goldspan, it gets +4/+4. If you have a Goldspan on the field already and you use the mana sacrifice from the treasures for double mana from the Goldspan, it's a +1/+1 counter for each mana you pump into the creature.
Oh, that's a very nice
Yeah, so you
combo.
can like
Yeah,
sack 2 treasures, play an Orcus, and it will get +4/+4.
yeah, which is
Yeah,
filthy.
it's
It's filthy.
cool. It's really
Yeah.
cool.
So this deck can go off real hard, and there's plenty of things you can do with it. You could try to incorporate a third color if you wanted to. I've seen various builds of it, and some of them have looked quite strong to me. So like for example, I've seen a Grixis build, which you can, get additional utility from cards like Gallisath Prismari, also Prismari Command. Those are both cards that make you treasures, and Gallisath is just an excellent card to bring back from the graveyard with Orcus.
Stop. You're giving the Grixis hope. You're giving the Grixis hope. What are you doing?
I know, man. What am I doing? Grixis Triome when? But I mean, you have a much greater likelihood of pulling off your Grixis nonsense when your deck contains like approximately 1 billion cards that make treasures. So yeah, I don't know. I just we could probably talk a lot about this deck, but I think there will be many, many iterations of a deck that looks something like that. And I think one of them is going to end up being very good.
I want to play it more because I think I'll have more to say about it in the future if we play it more. So I would, we'll come back to the deck, but I do think it's a really cool deck that is a whole new archetype basically unlocked by this theme in the set.
Yeah, totally. Okay, have you seen or done anything cool with Prosperous Innkeeper?
Yes.
Okay, I want to hear about that.
All right. So Prosperous Innkeeper, it was reviewed a long time ago, but it's the 2-mana 1/1 that makes a treasure and you gain life whenever a creature enters the battlefield. This card, for one thing, there's a life gain deck in green-white. There's a theme that's supported, and it looks like an absolute pile of trash. I'm just getting it out there. It looks, when you see it on paper, you roll your eyes and say, I'm not even playing it. When you play it, you win. And it features a lot of cards. I think if you were looking through like building a deck in your mind, you wouldn't get there because it's a bunch of the cards that aren't actually standard legal. They're only legal in Best of One Arena because they're part of the intro decks. We're talking about like Hallowed Priest and Imperious Orator or something. It's something like that. These are just more of these like life gain. Soul Mender is another one. Like these are cheap life gain clerics that are, I mean, honestly, if you're a Magic snob, maybe I've been guilty of this. It's like they're from the intro decks. You're not paying attention. You know what I mean?
Maybe I might have once or twice cast question on these life gain decks.
But these cards get huge. Like they get absolutely huge. And there's kind of a better green and white life gain Pridemate in the set.
The legendary one.
I'm gonna go ahead and pronounce this however the hell I want to. Trelasara Moondancer is a 2/2 white and a green for an Ajani's Pridemate that scries when you gain life. And we talked about scrying being a scam. I'm gonna tell you what. In a life gain deck that is built to create life gain triggers by playing decent cards like Prosperous Innkeeper, the scrying where you otherwise have no card draw or card selection of any kind is not a scam. You just hit one of your payoffs. Instead of all your dorky enablers, you're like scrying your way to a payoff every turn. So every turn is another Righteous Valkyrie. Every turn is another, we'll get to Cleric class in the future, like the good stuff. It's actually really sweet. So that deck is good. And this started because you asked me about Prosperous Innkeeper decks. I'm playing it a lot in Gruul Dragons. Dragon decks with green. Love this card. Not so much for the life gain, but just for the ramp. The treasures are excellent. This card is actually just very good as like a weird one-shot mana dork in so many ways. I love this card anywhere where you have fodder, sacrifice fodder, like a Plumb the Forbidden green-black deck that uses life gain with Dina to drain you is also like on the table. And most of these would suck without Prosperous Innkeeper. So I'm into the card.
Yeah, I think the card enables enough that it just gives you a lot of possibilities. And I think that we are only beginning to see those. And I think that Prosperous Innkeeper is the kind of card that's just going to keep showing up like throughout standard, right? It's going to show up in a surprising number of decks. We figured when we first saw this that it might be that, and I think it has lived up to that so far.
Yep, good card.
So just solid role player. It's an uncommon, so just craft them all and have fun. All right. Okay, there's another card that you put in a different category, but I did want to read it for the treasure. It's actually like probably the most exciting treasure card in the set for me personally. Unexpected Windfall.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so Unexpected Windfall is 2 red, and it's an instant. And basically, you draw 2 cards and then discard a card, and then you make 2 treasure tokens. So this is exactly the card. No, it's not exactly. It's close to the card Pirate's Pillage, which was a sorcery speed spell, and I believe that costs 3 and a red. But this is basically an almost strictly better version of Pirate's Pillage. Pirate's Pillage has already seen play, and I just think that this card is like a pretty large upgrade. I mean, boy, what can't you do with this card? I think this card does everything that you want to do in so many different decks, especially if you're like CGB. If this card was blue, I imagine you would just play it in like every deck ever, right?
I'd play it in a lot of decks.
Yeah, because think about this, right? You leave up like turn 4, you leave up counter magic. Your opponent does something you're not that worried about. You just draw 2 cards, you make 2 treasures, and you untap with 7 mana potentially. But you probably do.
That's awesome, but also flip it. They did something I cared about. I'm going to draw 2, and then I'm going to counter it with my treasures.
And then you're going to counter.
I'm going to do both,
right?
I'm going to have both. Yeah.
Or I mean, it gives you the dream of, let's say you know they play a creature, you decide to take some damage, you draw 2, you make 2 treasures. Next turn, you drop a 4 mana Wrath, clear the board, and you have 3 mana available to cast your counter spell the following turn. It's easy mode, right? It's easy mode for a control deck.
Those are all fair ways to do it.
Yeah.
A card that makes 2 treasures is potentially abusable because in many ways you don't need much to pay for itself. So in the past we had like a 1,000-Year Storm in Pirate's Pillage, right? It just makes basically endless mana when you copy this. Here we have, so if you have ways to copy the spell, there's Rowan's Planeswalker Emblem, for example. There is Teach by Example. There is Dual Strike. If you copy this, you just kind of get all your mana back.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. I think it's great when played fair, and I think it could be very busted when played in unfair decks. I fully expect this to show up somewhere. And I would consider trying this in any treasure deck. Like I would consider running at least 1 copy in any of my Goldspan Dragon decks.
Wow.
I mean, just like think about how hard you can go off, dude. If you cast this, end of your turn 3 or turn 4, you make some treasures, you slam a Goldspan, you swing, you make more treasure. I mean, we could have scenarios where you let's say you foretell Alrund's Epiphany, right, on turn 2, and then you control your opponent's board on turn 3. On turn 4, you cast this end of turn, and then on turn 5 you resolve your Goldspan Dragon, you swing in, you take an extra turn right then. Like you're so likely to win that game.
You always play another Alrund's Epiphany the next turn too, if you're doing it right.
Yeah, or another Goldspan Dragon. Either way, you're just like totally crushing at that point. So I fully expect to see Unexpected Windfall show up, and I would be very surprised if it didn't end up being a good card in some deck. All right, cool. Let's pass along to the classes here. CGB, take us into this.
So there's all these classes. I haven't played with a lot of them. There's a lot of them that I'm not even interested in reading them all because these have so much text, and I'm just like over it by the time I get halfway through number 2, like level 2. But there are a couple that come with board impact or significantly contribute to a game plan. And because of that, I think that they're worth talking about. So we're going to read 3 of the classes. If we don't read the class, you can put the words into my mouth. I haven't even read the whole thing, and I don't want to. Just assume that's the situation. So the first pass at a class that I'm going to talk about is Paladin class. Paladin class is white, and it is 1 in a white for an enchantment. How do I explain the classes? Let's see. There are enchantments that have an ability, and then you can pump more mana into them to get them to different, quote, levels to add abilities to the enchantment. So it's not an either or. It doesn't lose the first ability. It gains more abilities as you go. So they're really cool mana sinks, quite honestly. Paladin class is 1 white for spells your opponents cast during your turn cost 1 more to cast. Level 2, 2 in a white. Creatures you control get +1/+1. And level 3, 4 in a white. Whenever you attack, until end of turn, target attacking creature gets +1/+1 for each other attacking creature and gains double strike. So, have you played with this one?
I've not played with it. I've played against it, and I have definitely witnessed it do some pretty powerful things. I've seen people play it in decks that I personally didn't think were a very good use of it. I do think that it's a pretty good sideboard card in general, in like white creature decks. And I found, so the first ability hasn't been that impactful against me just because of the decks I've chosen to play, but I found that the second ability to just kind of do it whenever you feel like it, right? You just kind of whenever it makes sense to pump the team, I think can be really strong. I haven't yet seen anyone activate the third ability, but I think that can be very threatening in the right situation as well.
I bring this up because I agree it's going to be a good sideboard card. In Best of One, which 2022 is, when somebody plays this against me, I feel targeted, man. I feel like when they turn 1 Paladin class me and I look at my handful of like Dragon Fires and saw it coming, and I'm like, oh God.
Yeah, doesn't feel good.
No, this is so bad.
Yeah, dude. Especially if you're on the draw, right? You're like, now you're on the double draw.
There's a red button that can make all this pain stop, and it becomes tempting immediately. Like, I actually ran this in weird spots where I was running a combo that needed to be defended, and you just run this to try to make their life harder to interact on your turn. Removal spells are already kind of expensive. So any kind of instant speed stuff that the opponent wants to do, getting hit with Paladin class is kind of brutal. Have you ever had to pay the student cost of a Baleful Mastery and let the opponent draw a card and you pay 3 for that? Oh no,
that hurts. Hurts deep in the soul.
So I mostly mention it because Chapter 1 is so brutal to certain decks, and if those decks are meta, this card is one of the few ways to fight them and punish them for their flashy on your turn instant speed behavior in the format.
Yeah. I mean, one of the cool things about this card is that it has text against control decks and it has text against other creature decks. So it's gonna butter one side of the bread for you regardless. Like it's hard to think about a matchup where this card is doing nothing for you. Could exist, but I mean, so one of the things that I have come to, I thought about this theoretically, and it has definitely come to pass, is that it's just really excellent to have relevant mana sinks in your deck. Things don't always go according to plan, or sometimes your curve doesn't work out that well. And you're looking at your hand and you're like, well, I could play this inconsequential 1-drop and it's the only thing I can play this turn. Or maybe it's even a 2-drop that just doesn't really do very much, or you don't really want to play it right now. And you're on turn 3 and you're like, no, I actually have something relevant to do. I'll just sink my mana into this class. And then next turn I'll untap with 4 mana and do something, good. And from then on, you get that benefit from the rest of the game. So I found that the classes are just really good. If they're doing other good stuff for your deck, it's also just excellent to have that mana sink available to you. And sometimes it's even the threat of activation. Like, for example, I saw a couple of different people trying these like Selesnya based token decks playing Battle for Bretagard and some other token makers. So I'll remind you what this card does. Battle for Bretagard, 1 green white, and it's a saga. It's in Kaldheim. It creates chapter 1 creates a 1/1 white human warrior creature token. Chapter 2 creates a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token. And then chapter 3 basically doubles tokens, any tokens you have on the battlefield with different names. So this deck was sweet, by the way. I think you would have enjoyed the CGB. This deck played a lot of learn cards, and it fetched token makers from the sideboard, and it had a top end of a mascot exhibition. And if this person had had 2 mascot exhibitions in their sideboard, they would have crushed me, but they didn't. So spoiler alert, you should do that if you're running this deck. But anyway, so they were doing these filthy things, like they were just like making a bunch of tokens, doubling them up with Battle for Bretagard, and then they were just, they had multiple paladin classes out on the battlefield. Spoiler alert, these classes can stack really well, right? So they just like had the whole team buffed by like +2/+2. They kept on churning out tokens, and then it got to the point where like I had to look at this 4 and a white level 3 activation on Paladin class. Whenever you attack, target attacking creature gets +1/+1 for each other attacking creature and gains double strike. That was terrifying, like they went wide. Like they threatened some really disgusting attacks with this card. So anyway, that was a long way around of saying that there are many ways that you can abuse a card like this.
The next class we're going to talk about is Cleric class. Cleric class is 1 white for an enchantment, and if you would gain life, you gain that much life +1 instead. That's level 1. Level 2 is 3 and a white. I call this Heliod at home. Whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control.
we have Heliod at home. That's hilarious.
I'm really proud of that one. Yeah. All right. 4 and a white, level 3. When this class becomes level 3, return target creature.
You got me.
Return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. You gain life equal to its toughness. And the life gain deck I was describing with Prosperous Innkeeper and those cards that shall not be named from various intro decks is made really good by Cleric class. Normally, I hate the line of text of that much +1 life, but just to have a critical mass of life gain cards, I'm running Angel of Vitality, which becomes a 4/4 and kind of doubles up with this so that every 1 life gains you 3 and et cetera, et cetera. And then I'm also running Righteous Valkyrie, so hitting 27 is critical. And this card actually stacks up really fast, but only specifically for that life gain deck. And I think it's very much an important part of that. So I just wanted to basically use it to talk about that deck, although we kind of alluded to it already because of the Prosperous Innkeeper. The level 2, while it is a meme, it is not a joke. It gets the job done. When you start getting +1/+1 counters for your life gain triggers in a deck that does nothing but gain life, you're going to have some huge, awesome creatures. So Cleric class is something that you're going to need to craft, and it's only an uncommon if you want to play that life gain deck.
Yeah, and again, just a reminder, you can't have multiple Heliods on the battlefield at the same time, but you can have multiple Cleric classes out. So it stacks up, man. It stacks up.
I also just want to say, like, having mana sinks in this format are going to be a big topic of next week's show, but classes that are decent mana sinks, even though those abilities, when I first read like some of these, I was like, that effect is overcosted. Doesn't matter. It's just there. It's there when you need it. It's there when it's the right option. It's there to punish the guy who held up a counter spell, right? So that you get something out of your mana. Yeah.
Well, and another thing to note is that a lot, like, for example, these white decks are probably going to be playing a bunch of cheap cards, right? So if you're playing a deck that aims to empty its hand by turn 4 or 5, then every turn after that, it's gravy, right? So, I mean, I think that these cards especially... the classes reward decks that want to empty their hand. And that's why these, like, exactly, a 5 mana overcosted ability. It's not that big of a deal.
And this next one definitely rewards you for emptying your hand, is definitely a mana sink, and in my opinion is the best in class, and that
By
is
far. By far.
Ranger class. Rangers lead the way. 1 and a green. This is an enchantment at rare. When Ranger class enters the battlefield, create a 2/2 wolf creature token. Level 2 is 1 and a green. Whenever you attack, put a +1/+1 counter on target attacking creature. Level 3, 3 and a green. You may look at the top card of your library anytime. You may cast creature spells from the top of your library. Do you ever find it weird that on Arena, like you're supposed to be able to look at your top card anytime, but they just replace that text and make it all the time? You don't like have to click to kind of peek or anything. You know what I mean? You should have to peel it like we do in paper, right? You should have to just slow drag your mouse.
You like see the corner of it come up.
Peel it. Yeah, that's what it should be. Anyway, I know you've got stuff to say about this card, so go.
This card is bazonkers. Okay, so when I first saw this card, I was like, wow, is this card like really good? Wow, is this card actually like really, really, really good? I'm here to tell you this card is really, really, really good. So, okay, where do I begin? First of all, this card gives you 2 relevant permanents. It gives you a 2/2 on turn 2, and it gives you a very relevant piece of cardboard in Ranger class. So it is just a bona fide 2-for-1, which none of the rest of the classes that I can see do that for you. So, and a 2/2 for 2, it's not embarrassing. It's not great, but it's not embarrassing, especially when it comes with a free enchantment attached to it. Next, at any point in the game after that, you can choose to spend 1 and a green, which is just not that much mana, to activate the, number 2 ability on this card. And then you have it for the rest of the freaking game.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, the combination of it being cheap and it being exactly what an attacking deck wants, which is just to make your attacking creatures bigger every single turn. It's disgusting, dude. So, I mean, on the baseline, you can do something like I had this play pattern so often, right? So, like, let's say that, like, on turn 2, my opponent plays a Magda. And then on turn 2, I play Ranger class. And then on turn 3, they play some other creature. And then on turn 3, I activate Ranger class. I attack with a 3/3. Now they can't really block with their Magda. Maybe they block with their 3-drop. They don't really want to trade their 3-drop for a token.
Mm-hmm.
And then if they don't block, which is often what happens post-combat, you can just like Blizzard Brawl and just take out either their Magda or their other 3-drop creature, right? So that's like the fail case of this card, really. And then it just goes up from there. I had a lot of games in mono green where I'd play Ranger class on 2, and then I'd drop an Old Growth Troll on 3, and then I'd activate Ranger class and maybe have some interaction, or just maybe play another Ranger class on turn 4. They stack amazingly well. You just start, like when you have 2 of these out, every time you attack, you get 2 +1/+1 counters. It starts to get disgusting when you have tramplers in your deck, like the Old Growth Troll, which you can start stacking the counters on. Your opponent doesn't really want to kill your Old Growth Trolls because you're just going to get one back next turn and do it again. It even does stuff like allowing your Seeker's Chariot to attack through blockers that it otherwise couldn't. And let me tell you, that feels bad, man. You're like, okay, I'm gonna you can even do stuff like this. Let's say you get your Seeker's Chariot down on turn 4 or even turn 3 in a deck that runs mana docks. The opponent's like, okay, well, I'm going to play this big blocker. At least they can't attack profitably with that Chariot. Then on turn 4, the next following turn, you drop Ranger class and you buff it, and you're already attacking for +1 on that Chariot. And it can just put your opponent in such a bind. Another thing I want to say about this is it is a surprisingly annoying combination with God, why can't I remember the names of cards today? With Faceless Haven. Okay, so this plus Faceless Haven is just a face smashing machine, man.
Mm-hmm.
You've got 2 permanents, neither of which are creatures on your opponent's turn, which combine to just create an incredibly resilient and difficult threat, which grows every turn. This is before we've even activated level 3 on the card.
Yep.
Okay. So this card would already be good enough with the first 2. Level 3 is gravy. I haven't activated it that many times simply because my deck usually has something like a Faceless Haven or just something else to do with its mana. But should you get to the place where you have nothing else to do, this is an amazing ability. You would activate it for 4, and then you're just playing creatures off the top of your deck. A control opponent who wants the game to go long is basically going to cry when you do that. So this card is just an absolute trouncing.
It's, if you're not paying attention, you don't realize how much it's beating you. I think I think it's hard if you are listening to this or watching this and you haven't played against or with the card, you don't really, like, none of this sounds like a lot. Here's what's up. If this were a creature, if it were just all on one creature, if it weren't the enchantment that makes a creature, but it were just a 2/2 creature with all this text, it would be garbage.
Yep.
Because the opponent would just kill it with a cheap spell, because everybody's ready to kill a creature in this world, and then you'd have nothing left over. It's the fact that it's a perfect use of the class enchantment, quite honestly. I wouldn't be surprised if in the future more classes make creatures, because it makes such a difference. That this enchantment that sits around and has this ability that you can put mana into it when it matters is what beats you. The level 2 is the difference between your opponent being able to stabilize the battlefield. When they play their Galazeth Prismari, when they play their Desert Doom, right? The level 2, you activate that, and now you're still attacking your smaller creature into those. And we don't want that trade. We do not want our 4-drop or our 5-drop dragon trading with that puny little fodder creature you played, right? And that's why they can push damage. Like, we can't stabilize, Control Mage can't stabilize the battlefield with a creature or a dragon, which is so often the strategy in this format. And then level 4, if you blink and you look really hard, they've got an Experimental Frenzy.
Yep.
What? What?
Yep. What? It's bonkers. It's not even an overcosted Experimental Frenzy.
It's just, they just frenzy you. And all of a sudden, and most of the players who are having success with this card in mono green have figured this out. They run the Kazandu Mammoth, they run the Tangled Florahedron in their land spots so that they can just keep going off the top with the modal creature lands. Yeah, just bam, bam, bam. Oh my gosh, this card might be the best card in the set. After playing the games, I would have never said so before. After playing the games, I'm starting to be convinced.
This must be a true nightmare for you as a control mage, right, CGB?
Did you have to go there? I'm trying to be objective and a professional over here, dude. I'd unprint this thing. Can we get a ban? Can a control mage get a ban? Can I get a ban one time?
This is going to be the grown test card of the set, I promise you. Especially, one of the things I love about this card is, let's say that your opponent, your Izzet Dragon's opponent on turn 2, they just say go, right? They leave their mana up. And you're like, oh yeah, they left up a removal spell, and you just drop Ranger class, they're not going to feel good about killing your token, and they will have to do it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's just, this card's so punishing. This card is so punishing. Okay, so where is this card bad? This card is bad if your opponent is also aggressive and they're ahead of you, right? If you, never get a chance to attack, I guess that's it. Of all, you never get a chance to attack. The rest of this card is irrelevant, right? Because you played 2/2 for 2, which is an undercosted or overcosted threat, I should say. And your opponent runs you over, and this card didn't end up doing very much. So that's the one scenario in which Ranger class is not great. Mm-hmm. But having said that, it's not even embarrassing. It's just not that great. So, that's kind of that's the flaw on the card, I would say.
Yep. And I'll say, I've been in a situation where my opponent's board was Swarm Shambler, the 2/2 Wolf token, Old Growth Troll, and Ranger class on level 1, and I play Skyclave Apparition, and I target the Ranger class.
Yes.
Yeah, I've been there. That, and yes. I think it was right. And that's how insane this thing can be.
So yeah, just a few synergies. This with Swarm Shamble is great. You can just get all of your creatures kitted up with counters, and then every time they get targeted, you get a 1/1, which is amazing. In my version of the deck, I'm also running some copies of Oran Reef Ooze. And so, as a reminder of what this card does, this is from Zendikar Rising, 2 and a green, 2/2. When the ooze enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Whenever the ooze attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on each attacking creature with a +1/+1 counter on it. So I've had these curves where I regularly, this is like a nasty curve for this deck. You go turn 1 Shambler, turn 2 you play the ranger class, turn 3 you play ooze, and then turn 4 you turn on the class and attack. And that, my friends, gives you 3 attacking creatures that each have 2 +1/+1 counters on it. Now granted, that's if your opponent didn't disrupt you in any way, but I've pulled it off and it feels amazing.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm terrified.
Okay, so yeah, anyway, mono green is popping right now, and it just makes me so happy. Because if you've been listening to the show for a while, you'll know that I am an OG mono green mage.
I'm trying to give you all the space right here while we talk about Ranger class. I'm trying to give you all the space.
I appreciate that. So I'm gonna like hand it back to you, CGB, and try not to talk as much for the rest of the podcast.
Sure. So I wanted to do a quick talk about the creature lands. I think at this point we've either read them all or everybody's seen them because they're going into basically everything, right? Yeah. I thought it would just be a fun like little intermission to rank them. Like, what do you think is the like best to worst? And do you want to take this on, or do you want me to go first?
I'll let you do a crack at it, and then partially because I haven't really thought about it.
Okay. I'm going to give my number 1 to the blue one. Shocking, I know. But Hall of Storm Giants, I have won a stupid amount of games with the 7/7. It is in... Also, as a control mage, I've tried to play around when my opponent has the 7/7, and it's insanely hard.
Yes.
Yeah, it's so hard to keep the mana available. I've had so many games that I would have lost if I just had a Faceless Haven that I won because it's a 7/7 ward, and I was able to force my opponent to use their mana fighting a counter war that they had to win, but then they didn't have the mana left to handle the 7/7. So I think Hall of Storm Giants is the winner. I think it's the real winner of the group. But that said, I think that they're all very, very good because one of the characteristics of the format that we'll get into next week is that you're just never out of attacking. If you want to, if you are the beatdown, you never have to stop attacking. You can attack every turn with something because there's so many creature lands. Den of the Bugbear is good. I've actually been amazed how often I'm pretty happy to trade it with my opponent's 3 toughness thing. Like you just power it up and swing. Then if they block, they're down a battlefield presence, you're down a land, and you have a 1/1 left over. Like, what do you think that sounds about right?
I've always been high on Den of the Bugbear. I think it's a really good card.
After that, I like Lair of the Hydra. I've seen this thing be huge thanks to a lot of the treasures lying around. When we talk about mana sinks, Ranger class is a good one, but Lair of the Hydra never stops being sink. And you've mentioned Blizzard Brawl a few times. This is a card that was mostly under radar in Standard. Is a big part, in my opinion, of 2022. And having a Hydra that you can pump that mana into to activate, and then you can tap the Hydra itself for mana to cast the Blizzard Brawl to kill something that got out of range or otherwise would be out of range. I've seen that a few times. It's a pretty crafty play.
You know, I run one. This is a one of in my deck, and it's basically just Faceless Haven number 5.
Not bad, not bad.
Just ensures I always have a creature land.
I like it more in like Gruul or any other deck that really wants to scale mana, maybe plays Treasure. I think Hydra gets like a lot bigger. Once you get this thing into the kind of the same realm as the Hall of the Storm Giants, it becomes really scary really fast. Hive of the Eye Tyrant. I haven't used the trigger very much. I thought that exiling things from the graveyard would be relevant, but in 2022, I don't think I've cared very much. The Menace is nice, but the body seems underwhelming. So I haven't done much with Hive of the Eye Tyrant.
Yep, neither have I. I have not activated it, not seen it activated.
And the last one, what I have is the number 5 is Cave of the Frost Dragon. This is a 3/4 flyer that you basically need 6 mana to activate. at that phase, you're 1 mana away from like a Myria's Call, which is
Yeah.
like it's like arm wrestling kind of for the spot. And I've just found a Myria's Call to be so much better. 2/4/4 Flying Angels versus 1/3/4 Flying Dragon. So I don't think that the Cave of the Frost Dragon is a 0. I just think it's the least likely to get activated and be relevant.
I think I agree with you. I think this one is currently tied with the black one in my mind. I don't know which one is worse, but I accept arguments for either one being the worst. One thing I want to say about this tier list is that it's so meta dependent, and it's so dependent on what decks are good, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Like if a black aggressive deck ends up being the best deck in the format, then all of a sudden Hive of the Eye Tyrant is like back on the menu, right? But I think you make a good point specifically with the white one that there might just be better land options at that mana cost. So I think that that's a really good point. But yeah, that's ultimately what it comes down to for me. I definitely agree with you that the best one so far has been the blue one. I just think that, like I said earlier in the podcast, that being able to threaten just ending the game with it all of a sudden is really good. And it being in a common controlling color means that you're just going to be a lot more likely to do something like, wrath the board. The following turn, you counter or kill your opponent's threat. And then the following turn, you're just clocking them for 7 minimum, right? Maybe you also have an Amrith or something else out. It's just so threatening, and it's such a game ender. And like you said, it's going to be so crucial in control mirrors. Like, I think it's going to be like a deciding card in control mirrors. Like, if your opponent drew one and you didn't, you're just going to feel so far behind in those matches.
Yeah, big agree.
Okay, so the next section that we have to discuss here is underappreciated gems. These are cards which, they kind of do something cool and where they're maybe not seeing very much play, but we still think that they're worth just discussing for the cool stuff they do. So the first card on the list is Froghemoth. And surprisingly, I was not the person to add this to the list, believe it or not. I've had multiple viewers in my Twitch chat suggesting I play this card in my mono green deck. I have not yet, but let's read it. So 3 green, creature frog horror at rare. It is a 4/4 trample haste. Whenever Froghemoth deals combat damage to a player, exile up to that many target cards from their graveyard. Put a +1/+1 counter on Froghemoth for each creature card exiled this way. You gain 1 life for each non-creature card exiled this way. So, Froghemoth, have you experienced this card?
I have experienced getting Froghemoth, and when you get when this thing is an 8/8 the next turn, it feels so bad. I added this card to the list. I think it was like 2 days ago, and at the time, it had just come down and devoured me, as it does, and it's a pretty good card. It's good at what it does, as kind of that finisher mop-up cleanup role. In the time since then, I think that there's a better just way to do this, and it's just the creature lands. I think that almost every card that is 5 mana or more, you just have to ask yourself, when I would cast this, would I be better off turning on my creature land and attacking? And at the speed the format is, I think the answer is often you should be creature landing. And when that's the case, you should build your deck in a way that it's going to have the mana and the creature lands to do it with, or other mana sinks that help you get back to that situation. We talked about Ranger class. When you activate Chapter 4, that isn't a Froghemoth. It doesn't end the game, but it sets you up to recreate a battlefield state that can. So I do think this is a gem. The art, the flavor, the text on it, I don't know, it's more delightful in a lot of ways than Questing Beast. It's a cool card, but I think it comes up short of being a star.
I think you make a really good point. My mono green deck tops out at casting cost of 4. And I originally started running Vorinclex in the list, and I just found myself either never getting there in terms of mana, or just having other things to do with my mana. So I think that's very insightful, and I 100% put my stamp of approval on that observation. Another thing is just that graveyard decks are not a big thing in Standard 2022. If you start seeing substantially more graveyard decks, and especially like for example, if that Rakdos Orcus deck that's reanimating is like doing a lot of things, you might have turns where, you know, maybe they like swing in with a Goldspan Dragon and you have an opening to just get in with your Froghemoth and just demolish their entire graveyard. And that and maybe the life gain as well. Maybe you gain some life and that helps you survive the crackback with another dragon attack. So there could be these moments where Froghemoth shines, but I definitely wouldn't start it in any of my decks right now.
Yep. But the next card I think is actually really good and needs a home. Like, I think it will get found.
Okay, yeah, this card is cool. Gelatinous Cube, 2 black creature, ooze at rare for 3. And it has, when the cube enters the battlefield, exile target non-ooze creature. So this has the it has the Glorybringer text on it. Exile target non-ooze creature an opponent controls until Gelatinous Cube leaves the battlefield. And then it has this ability, pay X and a black, put target creature card with mana value X, exiled with Gelatinous Cube, into its owner's graveyard. So yeah, this is, I agree. I think that this is a solid card. It's a token killer, which I like. And it's even can be very good at just getting rid of cheap creatures. Like your opponent plays a 1-drop or a 2-drop you want to get off the battlefield, and it can sometimes be negligible to just drop this and even, you know, dissolve it in the same turn or whatever. But even if not, this can just be an important tempo piece. And it can sometimes feel a little bit like a Valky, right? It's like a little bit more of an expensive Valky, perhaps. But anyway, how have you been seeing this card play out?
I've really enjoyed every time I've played with this card. I've done a lot of Rakdos mid-range primarily with this card, and a little bit of mono black with Gray Merchant and some things like that, which is kind of fun. First of all, you can play this on turn 3 off of the Painter and put a +1/+1 counter on it. And hitting that 4th toughness with this card makes it a lot harder to kill. It actually matters a ton. And you get a 5/4. That hits hard. So that's one play pattern that I really like. Another thing about this card is we talked a little bit about the lack of Brazen Borrower in the format, but this does engulf tokens. You can just sweep that nasty token right off the battlefield with Gelatinous Cube and be ready to blink or reanimate the cube in the future to do it again, because it is, again, a removal spell on a body has a lot of advantages when it comes to graveyard reanimation, when it comes to exiling it and returning it to the battlefield, so bouncing it to your hand, all these things. So I found this card a lot better than I don't see many people talking about it or getting excited about it, but I found it very good. I've also used the Dissolve ability a good amount. It's another mana sink, but it's a way to make sure that the dead stay dead. So I like that it has that out on it, and I've never been burned by the exile target non-ooze creature clause. So I think this card will have a home, and I think it's worth trying to find it.
I agree. Yeah, it's a powerful card. Cards like this have been good in the past. Hostage Taker, while better than this card, was very, very played card, and I think this being mono black is to its advantage. So very cool card. Okay, next up, Magic Missile. I'm glad that you put this one on the list because I definitely wanted to talk about this as well. And so this is 1 red for an uncommon sorcery. The spell can't be countered. Magic Missile deals 3 damage divided as you choose among 1, 2, or 3 targets. So my main question for you, CGB, is has this been a main deckable card for you in this format?
No.
Okay.
But I think it plays an important role and it might get there if the meta goes in a certain way, because there's just too many things it can't interact with at all, like the dragons. I'm going to say that until people stop playing the dragons, because they seem to be all the rage, and they might be among the most powerful things going on. Like Magic Missile is embarrassing there. But it definitely has a part. And in standard, not standard 2022, it's really cool that you can play it in Jeskai Mutate to target your dragon and pick off other things. And
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. Yeah, that's a cool use case for it. But I mean, even against just decks like mono white, for example, I think that this card could end up being very good in certain spots. Probably not with all of these doggos and stuff around. They kind of make this card a little embarrassing, but I don't know, even just like maybe kill. Yeah, yeah. There are just plenty of spots for this to be picking off these little one toughness creatures, and fairly often getting a 2-for-1. So I'm a fan of this card too, and I wouldn't be surprised if it sees some actual furrowed brow standard play, probably in the sideboard.
Yeah, there is a white deck too that just kind of swarms the battlefield with all small creatures. Magic Missile against the pair of clever Lumimancer and the 2/2 one that also has Magecraft is pretty awesome. Just cleans them both up immediately. Leonin Light Scribe. That's it.
Leonin Light Scribe, you got it. Yep. So I'm looking for Magic Missile to do more work once both Alcid and the Doggo have rotated out of the format. I expect it to be fairly good after that. I think you're going to be killing a fair amount of like Paulo Vitor Domitorosas with this card. So
That's true.
There you go. Okay, demo, however you pronounce it, Demo Gorgon's Clutches, 2 and a black sorcery at uncommon. Target opponent discards 2 cards, mills 2 cards, and loses 2 life. So clearly you thought that this had a place in the format. What is making Mind Rot playable at the moment?
I think that this is the most aggressive Mind Rot that they've made. I played a tribal version of this whose name is really escaping me, and I don't think I'm going to get there, but it required you to have a vampire in play, and you could make your opponent discard 2 cards and lose 2 life. And that card, like on the play, was an absolute backbreaker in like an aggro type shell. And I think that there's a world where this card is a good sideboard card or a good curve filler. And I think it's actually important to keep around because the lose 2 life thing, it doesn't seem like much. We've had the version that like gains you 1 life and loses the opponent 1 life, and I wouldn't play that, but I think 2 life is a good threshold where you're playing a burn spell in a lot of situations and you're also getting card advantage from it, and I think that that's playable.
I mean, it is cool, like in a mono black aggro deck, or I guess any black aggro deck, it could be a pretty good finisher or like an anti-control card, right? You pick certain points on the curve to play it, and it's just an incredibly annoying card to play against your control opponent. So yeah, I don't know. Like for example, imagine, let's say you have a mono black deck and it's like a snow deck, right? Faceless Haven. This could happen maybe in the next set. We get enough support to have a good mono black aggro deck. So your opponent wipes your board, and usually at the board wipe point, they have like maybe 2 or 3 cards left in their hand. And then you just follow up with this card to like really try to empty out their hand. And then you just kill them with Faceless Haven. I could definitely see play patterns like that going pretty well, especially if you've had any other hand disruption in the match. So yeah, not a bad idea at all.
Yep. I think it's to keep, you should keep an eye on it. Keep it in the back of the head. It's not that bad.
Okay, so and then you also wanted to highlight You See a God Approach. So I'll read this card. 1 blue for an instant. Choose 1, distract the god, tap target creature. Or the other option is hide. Target creature you control gains hexproof until end of turn. So I assume that you're playing this mostly for the protection.
Why would you assume that? What about me screams that I just want to gotcha my opponent every chance I get? Yeah. I'm definitely more interested in this card because you can protect, say, your Desert Doom. When the opponent is going to cast they're going to pay their 4, right? And they're going to pay up for that ward spell. Let's call it a student costed Baleful Mastery for the fun of it. They're just going to go for it, and we're going to for 1 mana counter that by giving our creature hexproof. It's really nasty. It also works good on Goldspan Dragon in a similar vein. It also goes mana positive with Goldspan Dragon. You can use this and then make another treasure, and then also cast Saw It Coming because you made an additional treasure with it, which is kind of cool. Nice. So But I think that it is important that we staple on the ability to tap a creature, because there's going to be a lot of times where we're this tempo deck, or we just need to stay alive long enough to turn this corner, and tapping the opponent's creature for 1 blue could come up. There's been plenty of times where I've wanted, like, I just needed any effect to survive 1 more turn, and something good would happen for me. And this can do it. I think it's a really cool ability to attach to the kind of dive down hexproof ability. I always think of this Adrian Sullivan deck that won a GP, where he was playing an almost creatureless deck, except it had Niv Mizzet Perun, the 6 mana, like, all is it Niv.
That was such a cool deck,
and
man.
He had 2 dive downs in it, with no creatures to defend whatsoever except for the Nivs, because dive down plus Niv meant you usually untapped with Niv meant you usually won. And I feel like this card could serve that role, but be even more flexible. If Adrian had this card for that deck would be better.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Very cool. Okay, so let's pass along back to you, CGB, with the enablers.
All right, the enablers, these are some cards that I think open up the possibility for totally new, different decks. And I just wanted to cover whether or not those decks are coming together and what it is. So the first one I definitely need to talk about is the Book of Exalted Deeds. And this is a mythic legendary white artifact. It is white. You may know it from the play queue as that legendary angel artifact thing. And it says, at the beginning of your end step, if you gained 3 or more life this turn, create a 3/3 white angel creature token with flying. And then there is white. Tap this, exile the Book of Exalted Deeds. You can only do this as a sorcery, and you put an enlightenment counter on target angel. It gains, you can't lose the game, and your opponents can't win the game. So you might think, why the big deal? It makes angels. It can turn one of them into a platinum angel, but then all you have to do is kill the angel. Easy, right? Like, angels aren't known for their indestructibleness in 2022 or anything really. They're known for being the most vulnerable of things. Faceless Haven is all creature types. It's all creature types. You can power up the Haven, and then you can put the counter on it, and now you have a land. And if they don't destroy this land, they will lose the game someday. That's what it's all about. Like white prison, baby.
Yep, it's a stupid combo. And then I even saw Ali Antrazi running this in a deck with Tyrite Sanctum. So then you give you a Faceless Haven indestructible, and then it's a true lock.
Wow. I had people telling me to run Tyrite Sanctum, and I looked at it and was like, I don't need like another 3 mana effect. And I didn't. But I gotta tell you, it sounds kind of trolly and kind of nice.
That's it. It's just like, it's a way to put the cherry on top, right? It's a way to give the true middle finger.
So speaking of the true middle finger, I played my Book of Exalted Deeds, Faceless Haven, Splinter Twin combo nonsense a bit, and then I switched to my mono white, or my green white life gain deck that I told you about before, that just does 1 million life gain triggers. And I played against Jim Davis, and he was running Book of Exalted Deeds combo. And he got his combo. And I was like, too bad, man. I'm into this. Because I didn't come here to reduce your life to 0. I came here to gain life. And I was like, I'm going to just keep gaining life, and he's going to concede. Like, there's no way he's going to sit through it, because I can stack 1 billion life gain triggers. And I did. And he eventually,
you got him to back out. That's hilarious.
He bailed on his own prison. And I retroactively messaged him and conceded. I'm like, this is just content though, because it's just totally the evil villain hatches their plan, and then surprise, I'm into that shit.
Yeah. Oh, CGB actually likes it.
Oh yeah, I will be over here gaining life. I'm just going to try to break the client. Thank you very much. I always wondered how much I could gain.
What's that phrase, like, never wrestle a pig, you'll get muddy and the pig will like it, or something like that? That
must be a British thing, man.
There's some saying like that. I think that this describes this situation perfectly.
Yeah.
So do you think Wizards knew this interaction existed, or do you think it just kind of got by play design?
If they knew, it would signify that they decided not to care about really bad experiences on MTG Arena, which I don't think is true because of what they've done with Nexus of Fate in the past. You know, Nexus of Fate was a great example of, well, we didn't expect people to just play endless turns of Magic with no win cons to get the opponent to concede. So I guess we'll ban Nexus of Fate in best of one. And I think if they knew about this, they would have changed it, because this does lead to a miserable best of one play experience where if each player does this, the game never ends.
Yeah. One of you has to concede.
Somebody has to scoop, or somebody will. I mean, if you, assuming you can get a lovely wife like I have to bring you food, or your mom in your basement or whatever, like you can just have this endless staring match where who falls asleep first, and it's not good Magic. So I have to assume they kind of missed this, but I also don't think this is that busted. I think it's okay.
I mean, need what? You need like 7 mana to
6.
actually pull off the combo.
You can tap the Faceless Haven to activate itself as a snow mana.
Oh, okay. That's good to know. Yeah, that's good to know. So yeah, I mean, it's not like, this isn't Tybalt's trickery, right? You're not like losing the game on turn 2 or whatever. So you do have plenty of opportunity to do whatever your deck was designed to do in the meantime. So yeah, it's kind of like if you lose to this, you kind of had it coming, I guess.
In 2022, there's not a ton of good ways to protect your combos. So if the opponent just has a Frostbite, you're in trouble a lot. But in actual standard, Selfless Savior is a real pain when you go for it. Yeah, and like you can use Lurrus to get back a Savior. They kill the Lurrus. You let the Lurrus go. You keep the Savior. The next turn, you turn on Haven and you do this. And like they're in trouble.
I guess this could just be like a one-off alternate win con. Right?
Yep.
Especially in like let's say it's a life gain version.
Yep.
You know, you're playing like mono white life gain, snow, you know, you run 4 copies of Haven anyway. And this could just be maybe it's making you a couple angels and then you just happen to get the combo. So the good
versions that I've played are good at making angels so that you're under pressure anyway. And then you have to deal with the board and then you get comboed because you can't protect the creature that well. I'll also say that there is a card that's legal, Search for Glory. This is the 2 and a white, search your library for a legendary card, a saga card, or a snow permanent card. And this card actually fetches both sides because the book is legendary, or you can fetch the Haven because it's snow. So
that's pretty sweet.
I've run a few decks with just 1 book of Exalted Deeds. I also ran a version with like 4 Raven's Warning with the book in the sideboard. So there's some stuff you can get up to have a 2-card I win the game combo where one of them is a land you wanted to play anyway, and it doesn't get in the way of the rest of your deck.
Yeah. So perhaps just based on the quote unquote freeness of the combo and how good it ends up being and how annoying it is if it gets pulled off, maybe we'll see a ban going on here at some point. But maybe Wizards just thinks it's enough of a meme, we're not going to worry about it.
We'll see. They should watch my Jim Davis game. Like, you just embrace it, man. You're just like, all right, I can't win, well, I'll torture you.
Let's just roll in that mud, buddy.
Do you like life triggers? Do you like watching life triggers?
Mud. Let's go. Okay, what's next on your list here?
Demi-Lich is on my list, and we talked about it on last week's show. I will say that from playing it, I don't think this card has a 2022 home. Like, there just aren't enough good cheap spells. Doesn't seem doable. The standard Is It Prowess deck seems good, but not good enough. It seems like an okay upgrade, an okay addition, but it didn't take that deck to the next level. But for as long as this card is in standard, we are keeping an eye on all of the cheap spells that come and go. It needs a critical mass. 2022 doesn't have it, but I think that Demi-Lich is a good card waiting to strike.
Yep. I agree. I think it's an older format consideration, and in standard, it's going to take some work. But hey, if they reprint Manamorphose into standard, then there you go.
Not going to happen.
A man can dream, CGP.
Okay, boomer.
Indeed. And how about...
My turn, right? Yeah, it's still my
Yes.
turn. I'm
Still your turn,
really
buddy.
good at the host thing. I'm a natural. So Oswald Fiddlebender is the next one on my list of enablers making archetypes possible. Now, Oswald, because I was lazy there and just kind of got into myself, I didn't pull up just yet, but I'm about to. So don't you worry one bit, folks at home. Oswald Fiddlebender is 1 and a white for a 2/2 legendary gnome artificer at rare. Has the ability Magical Tinkering. White tap, sacrifice an artifact. Search your library for an artifact card with mana value equal to 1, plus the sacrificed artifact's mana value. Put it onto the battlefield and shuffle. Activate only as a sorcery. Birthing Pod for artifacts. It's very exciting. Like, this card, I think, comes with a lot of excitement value.
Absolutely.
I haven't found the artifacts, man. I haven't found them. Did you find any?
Not in standard. Again, this strikes me as like an older format hit, you know. I think, you know, like historic, we already have plenty of things to be considering. And then, you know, any format older than historic, I'm sure there'll be considerations. Who knows whether it's good enough, but it's certainly, the effect is cheap. And you know, there are plenty of like good value 2-drops, right? Like, you sacrifice your like golden egg or whatever, or your what was that card they just printed into historic that gives you a card if it hits the graveyard as well?
Igor Wellspring.
Echo Wellspring, yes, that's a perfect combo. And then you go and get some 3-mana artifacts, and you know, you're kind of off to the races. So yeah, I definitely expect people to be at least trying with this in historic. But I agree, standard, we're not going to see this soon in standard, probably, if ever.
There's a huge difference between fetching a creature and fetching an artifact. You can get creatures that do value, but they also attack and block. And the weird like tension is that you want to sacrifice like a 2-mana artifact that got you value to get a 3-mana artifact that impacts the battlefield. Well, if you go get Maul the Skyclaves and equip it to your Oswald Fiddlebender, he's tapped. Good job.
Yep.
You know, so I guess you need another creature, right? You need 2 other mana on turn 3 to play something that you want to attach your Sky Maul to, like your Loyal Warhound. But it's complicated. It's definitely not intuitive at this point, and I'm curious to see what happens, because there will be artifacts in every set. If they're good, something could come of this.
So one of the challenges with a deck like this is that Oswald Fiddlebender is, I mean, you're going to need a deck with a critical mass of artifacts, which means you're probably not going to have a lot of creatures. And your opponent, most decks in Magic come equipped to deal with, you know, 2-mana 2/2s, right? So I feel like you're going to have a lot of hands where this is the only creature and it turns on your opponent's removal and you kind of get punished for running it. So you need to have some kind of a plan for that. That's one of the reasons why, like you said, creature-based Birthing Pod decks are a little more resilient, because you're more likely to have other creatures on the battlefield that also need to get removed, and then you're kind of really taxing your opponent's removal. You're forcing them to have the right removal in the right spots. And I just see Oswald Fiddlebender eating whatever removal your opponent has, and that's kind of that.
But I wish this card came with a fiddle. I wish that Oswald entered the battlefield and created a fiddle token, which was like just an artifact that did nothing. Right? And then you could sacrifice it to get a 1-drop. Yeah.
Hammer time, baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be sweet. I am curious what kind of fiddling is going on here.
Are we moving into the next category?
Looks like we are.
All right.
So
I guess your jam? It's a long category.
It's my time to shine.
All right.
So the first card we have on the list here is Hobgoblin Bandit Lord. And this is kind of this is like a doozy in search of his army, is kind of a way I would describe this card. So this is a 1 red gold creature goblin rogue. Rogues players take note. This is a rare. It is a 2/3. Other goblins you control get +1/+1. You can tap red and tap it, and Hobgoblin Bandit Lord deals damage equal to the number of goblins that enter the battlefield under your control this turn to any target. So in my mind, the question is not whether Hobgoblin Bandit Lord is good, because in my opinion, it is clearly a fantastic Magic card. I think the real question is, where's the deck?
In historic.
So here's my question. Does this go straight into the historic deck?
Have you thought about this with Krenko Mob Boss basically doubling that trigger?
I'm not saying it's not good.
Okay.
I'm just saying, is it like, because that deck already runs 8 3-drops, right? Which give your goblins haste.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of wondering if they have room for it.
Me too. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not the goblin expert in historic, but I think it's an interesting addition for sure. The idea of like using this with haste and then with a Krenko trigger to end the opponent without even needing a Muxus is pretty appealing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, it is just an objectively very strong card. It has enough on it to do a lot of work. So if we get more goblin support in standard, I could see this being a player for sure.
I mostly added it to the list because I wanted to check in if goblins got there. Did goblins get there? Is it a deck in 2022 or current standard?
No.
It's not as far off as you think, though.
Yeah,
the pack tactics goblins. There's one right here on the page in front of me. So like Hobgoblin Captain. Like there's another one with pack tactics that gives everything +2 and haste, or +1/+0 and haste. Like those are very medium creatures, but they come together really well for this deck. So I think you can play goblins and ladder decently in 2022 standard. I don't think it can compete with green. Like, I think you're going to get destroyed by green. I think you're going to steal some games from the Prismari decks that don't run sweepers. I think you're going to steal some games from people running various nonsense. But I think you're going to have to settle for being a pretty tier 2 or worse creature deck.
Yeah, I happen to think that the mono red deck in standard 2022 is probably the fourth best monocolored deck in the format. So it's not coming out very far. It's funny too, man. You run into these people playing these mono red decks in the queue, and you can tell that they just don't want to look at another color, man. They just can't do it. They just cannot bring themselves to stop smocking, dude. And I have news for you, man. Red lost a lot.
Everything.
They lost everything.
Fireblade Charger, it falls to you to carry. You have the mantle. You now must hold the sword. You are the holdout from the pile. Hall Monitor, get in there, buddy. You were on the edge, but now you have a chance. It's your time to shine.
You know what it reminds me of? It's like that scene in Monty Python and the Holy Grail where the Black Knight keeps getting his limbs chopped off, and he's like, come on then, let's keep going. And at the end, he's just like quadriplegic, and he's just like, I'll bite your legs off. And that's basically
what Mono Red is doing.
That's where Mono Red is right now. So, yeah, you can do it if you want, man, but I don't know about all that.
Speaking of all that, the next card on the list.
Yeah, so Flame Skull, we discussed this card previously, and this is, definitely one of the better, I would say, mono red cards. And not just mono red, but predominantly mono red, I would say, cards they've printed in the set. Having said that, I've not seen this on the battlefield a single time. How about you?
I have seen it a few times, and I think that the big mistake we're making is thinking that it is a mono red card. Because I don't think it is. I think that this card, here's the problem. The idea of playing a game of Magic where you play Flame Skull and the opponent removes it, and you play Flame Skull and the opponent removes it, and you play Flame Skull and the opponent removes it, and you call that getting ahead. That's not how Magic is anymore. Like, you might find yourself up against one of these like really stubborn control mages who wants to play like removal and counter tribal and have 1 or 2 win cons. But I mean, as a guy who loves that style, I'm the one trying to like turn the tempo with dragons and Ulrun's Epiphany and just smash you on turns 5 through 9. So I'm already off that, which means everybody else is probably going to figure that out too. Flame Skull is not good when you're just playing it every single turn, because as the game goes on, the opponents will have better things to do than play a 3/1 flyer that can't block. They'll play bigger, stronger cards, or they'll double spell, or they'll draw more cards. Like if you play Flame Skull every game, eventually they will do something cooler than you. So I think that where Flame Skull belongs is in a place where you can make more mana so that you can do the Flame Skull plus other things at a really good rate. And Rakdos has the treasure theme, right? So if you use this with Painter, it comes out as like a 4/2. If you have 2 treasures, it comes out as a 5/3. Now we're hitting them. You know what I mean? And if we run this with the, what is it? Immerstrom Predator, like you can keep your Predator.
That's a combo.
Yeah, your Predator keeps growing, so it scales and it's indestructible, which is a lot harder to deal with than people realize. And it's a dragon, so it's hard to target, and it blocks all of their other nonsense all day. It tangles with all the other dragons in the format. The other place I like it is Gruul. In Gruul, you can generate a ton of mana with the mana creatures like Sentinel, Jaspera Sentinel. And that just means that you keep playing this, but you're also doing other things. You're playing this and more threats. You're playing this and you're turning up Rangers class. You're playing this and you're playing Goldspan Dragon. You just get more out of the card.
Yeah, which I mean, I think that's a compelling narrative for how this card could end up being good. I still just wonder if you couldn't be doing better things with your mana.
Okay. I did what I could. I tried.
But I mean, that's an if, right? That's an if. The card's clearly powerful. It's got kind of Squee the Immortal vibes. Yeah, who knows? I think it is an objectively powerful Magic card, and it's another one of those cards that you just kind of, it's always lurking in the background being considered. I think this is
metal,
one,
man. People want the metal.
It is quite metal. And I mean, I don't know, man, like eventually maybe there'll be enough parts of the Buffalo that make sense that you run Flame Skull and you feel good about it. It's also like, this is one of those cards where like it's like bad in every format, but then all of a sudden it just ends up being like some game ending combo piece in Legacy or something. Like it's just, I don't know, this is one of those weird kind of cards.
Maybe.
Okay. Speaking of weird cards, let's talk about Dancing Sword. 1 and a white artifact equipment at rare. Equipped creature gets +2/+1. When the equipped creature dies, you may have Dancing Sword become a 2/1 construct artifact creature with flying and ward 1. If you do, it isn't an equipment and it has equip 1. So yeah, this is a flavorful card.
I mostly added it to keep an eye on the equipment subset because it seems if there's a space that most of us ignore because we've just seen the same thing for years and years in every set, there's these equipment cards and we just kind of, I don't know about you, I kind of zone out when people are like, oh my god, Boros equipment's going to be good now, and I'm just like, yeah, sure it will. And it just hasn't really happened, right? Not since, I guess you want to say like Stoneforge Mystic. Like that is the power level of card it took to make equipment super powerful, and we just don't get those cards anymore. But here you have a card that is an equipment and a creature, so the downside is the goalpost is moving. And if we get enough stuff like this where it's like it's the equipment but it's also the creature, we've also got Icing Death and there's more stuff like this, at some point there might be a deck to be built. And I think for the brewers to try to find something that other people haven't found, this is a place where not a lot of people are looking, but cards like this start to make it seem more playable.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they're trying to push a Halvar God of Battle deck, and this could be a player in that deck. It gets kind of rough, right? Because how many equipments do you want? Once you have the Cupcake Tyrant and the Sky Maul, it's like how many additional Dancing Swords, do you want to add to your deck after that, right? One thing that I want to note about Dancing Sword is the whole point of this card is your creature dying and you getting the free 2/1. So I the only time I've played against this in Standard 2022, my opponent equipped this to a creature, I killed the creature, and they kept the equipment. And I was just like, what?
Can't help you, man. Can't help
you.
Dude,
like, that's the card, right? That's the card, okay? If you're keeping this card once the creature dies, you have to have a very, very, very good reason to do so. So yeah, it was worrying in that regard, but when the opponent misplayed, then it was not very threatening. Final thing to note about this card, like, do goblins just not have blood? I mean, look at this goblin, man. This goblin literally just has its arm like cut off in one fell swoop, and there's nary a drop of blood to be seen. So
Yeah.
I'm just curious about that.
I mean, wow. I already actually looked up the other card. I'm not looking at that artwork right now.
Okay. All right. Moving on then. Westgate Regent. Yeah, this is a card I've had my eye on. This card could just actually be good. So 3 black, creature vampire at rare. It is a 4/4 flyer. It also has ward, discard a card. So it's kind of like a guaranteed 2-for-1. And whenever Westgate Regent deals combat damage to a player, put that many +1/+1 counters on it. So I happen to think that this is like the better Froghemoth.
It might be, yeah.
I haven't actually played with or against this card, but it reads like a banger to me. I don't know if it's better than like Goldspan Dragon or other kind of 5-mana top enders that you could be playing, or even like Orcus, right? Maybe this card's just not as good as Orcus and you play that instead. But what do you think about this card?
I think that we're looking at like a 2-of in decks that can't play some of the other options that you talked about. And it is a game ender and it's a proactive one. So I like getting on the battlefield and getting in the air in this format. And we'll talk about more about it next week. But I like just about everything that's 4 mana or more to be able to get up in the sky and tussle with a Goldspan Dragon, which this does. It's worth noting that if the opponent has no cards in their hand, like it's hexproof. Untouchable.
In fact, they need 2 cards in their hand to even think about it.
So if they are 1 card in hand or empty-handed, right? And you have this card and they are like, go, you know, you'll attack once, it'll turn into an 8/8, but next turn they might kill it, right? If you make them discard a card, like they had to hold that card. So if you can hit them with some kind of a devour intellect discard effect during the turn that they can't interact because they didn't have enough cards, then you're just like shutting them down. It kind of makes, what I'm getting at is it makes discard spells or effects a little bit better in the mid to late game, where otherwise the people are just playing out their cards, right? Okay.
That's a good point. Like it makes cards like Demogorgon's Clutches a lot better.
Yeah, a little bit. Like I'm thinking more of like discard 1 effect, but yeah, as far as getting to that point, the clutches get you there, so that makes sense too. Yeah, both of those are good.
Another thing to note about this card is that you might be able to deal with the first one. The second one's going to be a lot harder to deal with.
Yes, or a reanimated one by Blood on the Snow,
or even Orcus.
Or Orcus.
Orcus can get this guy back
with enough mana. You can do it. So yeah, I'm looking forward to playing this card more and seeing what it does.
I think it has a lot of potential. It could, in the right deck, it could be like the Groner, right? It could be like, oh God, I have to deal with another Westgate Regent now. Just another card which is so much better on attacks than blocks. I kind of like that they've been doing this with a lot of these like Bane Slayers. They've been printing a lot of Bane Slayers that really have to attack to get the benefit. And I think it's a cool design space. It also makes Amrith that much more brutal, because Amrith is just like, Amrith is the answer to these cards. It's the answer to Westgate Regent. It's the answer to Goldspan Dragon. It's the answer to Froghemoth. It's just got the ground freaking covered, man. So that card's not getting any worse. That's for sure.
True.
Nope. Okay, let's see. White, WIGHT. We discussed this card last week. Have you seen it anywhere?
I played a mono black deck, and I just want to talk about a really cool play that happened. I attacked with the white, and the opponent blocked with it was like a 1/1 with a +1/+1 counter. I believe it was like something that they played off of like a Prosperous Innkeeper that they played off of the Treasure Painter, so it got a little buff. All right, so they blocked the 2/2. They blocked my 3/2 with the 2/2, and I play Heartless Act, and I remove one of the counters. So I killed so their creature died. That's awesome. It damaged the white, and because it damaged the white, I got a 2/2 zombie, and I still had the white. I know.
Very, very well done, CGB.
I know.
Very well done.
Amazing.
I'm
so proud of myself.
I still think this card could be good. I'm keeping an eye on it for a mono black aggro deck.
Black got a lot. They got a 1 mana 2/1 in Dungeon Crawler. Then they got a 2 mana 3/2. And the abilities on these cards are very relevant, unfortunately. So they're mostly vanilla, but I mean, they didn't have good bodies, good aggressive bodies. We were making do in the past, and now they have them. So we'll see if it adds up to something.
Yeah, it could get to a critical mass. Okay, next card, Ochre Jelly, X green creature ooze at rare. It is a 0/0. It has trample. Ochre Jelly enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. And then it has this ability split. When Ochre Jelly dies, if it had 2 or more +1/+1 counters on it, create a token that's a copy of it at the beginning of the next end step. The token enters the battlefield with half that many +1/+1 counters on it, rounded down. So the joke here is that you cast this for like 7 mana, make a 6/6, it dies into a 3/3, and then it dies into a 1/1 or something like that.
Yep.
So it's a pardon the wordplay, a sticky threat. See what I did there? But this
how much
card
longer is this show? Just kidding. Go on.
Okay. This card looks strictly worse to me than the creature land. What do you think?
I agree with that. I do think that there's some excitement around the card based mostly around, one, ways to put more counters on it. So like a Luminarch Aspirant in this, it just keeps getting more counters. Or the other ooze, for example. The
Ozolith?
Yeah.
We could go off with the Ozolith.
That was the other one. Yeah, the Ozolith. Yep. You just keep re-adding counters to the token, and you just can never get rid of this card. I haven't had any trouble beating this card, but I think it excites people for the possibilities, and ooze somewhere in this world, in this universe, became a beloved creature type, and I don't know why. I can't answer. I don't speak ooze. But there are people who love it. They ate too much Jell-O as a kid, okay?
This is like one of a long series of Hydras. Now, Hydras have been bad for a long time, with a few notable exceptions. So what was the Hydra? It was like green, X, and then it fought or doubled the counters. Do you remember that Hydra? One?
No. No.
Voracious Hydra. Okay, so that card was a banger. That card was a real player. I think that's the last time we've had a Hydra be good. This card, in my opinion, just doesn't quite get there. I agree that it's a cool design.
Yep.
One of the issues is that green doesn't want creatures that are understated for the cost, right? Green wants to go in the other direction. You want to spend 3 mana and get a 4 power 4 toughness creature. You don't want to spend 6 mana and get a 5 power 5 toughness creature, even if it dies into something that's usable. It's just not like playing this on turn 4 as a 3/3 is like the worst of times, right? So
Arjuna, then you get a 1/1. You basically got a 4/4 for 4 mana.
I mean, we're really doing it. We're really doing it. So unfortunately, it doesn't get there for me. I agree. Unless you have a way to like cheat a bunch more counters onto this, and you're really going off, I don't see this card showing up.
Well, you're gonna go off on the next one, right?
Indeed. I will. Indeed, I will. So they gave us a werewolf in this set, and this card is about as banger as you can expect a 2-drop to be. So this costs green. It is a creature human werewolf, and it is a rare 3/3. And it has pack tactics. Whenever werewolf pack leader attacks, if you attack with creatures with total power 6 or greater this combat, draw a card, the magical words. And then for 3 and a green, you can do until end of turn. Werewolf pack leader has base power and toughness 5/3, gains trample, and isn't a human. So, I mean, what doesn't this card do, man? First of all, this is the first like 2 mana 3/3 that we've been able to play in green since Barkhide Troll left the format.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's one thing that mono green loves, it is 3/3s for 2. It's probably the best stat line in the deck. So you want one of these on turn 2 pretty much every game. The only times when I would play my Ranger instead is if I thought that my opponent had Ranger class is what I mean. The only time I'd play this instead is if I thought my opponent had some removal up that could kill the pack leader. In that case, I would play the Ranger class to punish them. But in all other scenarios, you want to play the pack leader on turn 2, and then you just want to smash. This card doubles up very nicely. So you can have these curves. Like, for example, I've had these awesome curves where you go pack leader into pack leader Snakeskin Veil. And then your opponent tries to remove one of them, you Snakeskin Veil, and then you attack the following turn and draw 2 cards. That is often a game-winning sequence right there. And then the pump ability does come into play sometimes. It makes blocking this thing awkward, and which is, it's punishing, right? Because you want to block the dang thing and kill it, but then you also have to be prepared for it trampling in. And if this thing gets any additional counters on it, then that trample ability can be a game finishing ability, which I've activated this for the win more than once. Also, some people just forget. They just forget this card has that ability on it, and so they let it through, and you pump it and deal, if your opponent's at 5, you just kill him that way. So
yeah, it attacks right through the blue dragon because of that ability. They can't block it.
Yes.
It's annoying.
Yes, which is so annoying, right? Like, right. You're like, great, my opponent's 2-drop can attack into my Amrith. Like
my 5-drop. My 5-drop, like, game winner card, supposedly.
Yep. That is a particularly salient interaction, and it's one of the reasons, just one of the many reasons this card is so good.
I agree with everything you said. I think you did this card justice. I want to talk a little bit of design, mumbo jumbo. If this is what the next set, which in the next set in the fall is the werewolf set, if this is even a hint at what's coming, I mean, you were afraid of like a super pushed fall creature set. I mean, if this is the one werewolf we get in the Forgotten Realms, what is a whole pack going to be like? So here's my theory. My theory is that this is how Wizards design works. They're ready to push the set, and then they're like, somebody comes back to them, hey, survey says that we're kind of tired of a certain green card, and you have a card in your Forgotten Realms set. It's 3 mana for a 5/5, and when it enters the battlefield, it creates a 1/1 creature, and it has some marginal drawback, right? And people really don't like Lovestruck Beast. They kind of want that to go away because it's invalidated every other creature in the format for 2 freaking years. So we need you to scrap that card, and what are we going to do to replace it? Let's just reach over and grab a card from Innistrad, the new Innistrad set, and just move it over here, and we'll work on some other green rare for Innistrad. Yeah, we got a werewolf right there. People like werewolves. We'll add that. It doesn't sound very Forgotten Realmsy. Let's just add that pack tactics line to it. What do people who play green like? I know, draw a card. Easy.
Because that's what green needs more of, really, is card draw. Yeah, I think that's a good theory, and I also like it, CGB, because it gives people less complaint equity for that set, right? They're like, well, we're just going to take some of the busted cards and spread them around. So it's like they're printing an Eldraine, but they're just kind of hand-picking cards to like stick in lower powered sets like this.
Yeah, so. Like Goldspan Dragon. Do you think Goldspan Dragon was meant to be in this set?
Yeah, I mean, it's possible,
maybe.
Right?
Who
it's
knows?
Possible.
Who knows?
That's a really good point. Yeah. I mean, I do think they have this history of like staggering key cards for an archetype across sets. Like Rogues is a really good example. It took a while to get there, but we did. Let's just mention Rogues, by the way. Rogues is another deck which is dead. If you're wanting to play Rogues in 2022 standard, you have to be ready to lose. What do you think, CG?
I was going to bring that up with the next card.
Oh, okay. Okay. I stole the thunder, man. I'm sorry. Well, yeah. So let me, what is he even doing with me on this podcast? Okay. Grazilax, Illithid Scholar, 1 blue for a legendary creature horror at rare. It is a 3/2, and it is a pretty gross looking creature. Whenever a creature you control becomes blocked, you may return it to its owner's hand. Whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, draw a card. So I'll set you loose on this one, CGB. Tell us about it.
If there's some squid licking my head, I'm out. I scooped to that, okay?
It's a lick. It's an arch lick, CGB.
A horror, which is very appropriate. So I was going to talk about Rogues because when we talked about Grazilax, or when I thought about it and when I added to the list, I thought it would be a pretty cool card with the evasive creatures and Rogues. And yeah, you're right. that deck is pretty ugly at this point, and I'll probably keep trying. But for the most part, the idea of play a cheap, evasive blue creature or black, and then play another, and then play this and draw a card and have a 3/2 on the battlefield, like that's a good line of text or a good curve, but it doesn't really line up with this format at all. Like the opponents are either going to outclass you or easily pick off your threats. Like Frostbite is everywhere, and if you're not playing Frostbite, you're probably playing creatures that are just absolutely thrilled that you're attacking that the opponent has to attack you with small creatures to get their card advantage. So this card didn't get there for me. I'm still on the lookout for it. Like if there's like a 2 dudes card, like a Raise the Alarm, but maybe it's in blue or something, because who cares? Just color pie is a lie anyway. But yeah, if there's like, maybe there's some cards somehow that make this thing pay. Also, without Brazen Borrower and the adventure creatures, the ability of returning stuff to hand looks really bad. So I'm off the card, but it is a rare that some people were excited about, and it says draw a card on it, so I wanted to cover it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the curve of Yuan T. Malison into Grazilax is not terrible, right? It basically guarantee, you guarantee your Malison gets through, you guarantee you draw a card.
Yep.
And, Bone Crusher doesn't exist in this new format, and so it makes cards like this definitely more playable.
Yeah. It'll clown Sparky.
Indeed. Which is
that bot.
This is what we really want to do, right? Well done, Planeswalker. Okay. Next card, Grim Wanderer. We talked about this card before. It's the flash 5/3 for 2 mana, and you can cast it only if a creature died this turn. I've only played against this card like once. It did the thing. The opponent got it off. It was pretty good. It's the mono black aggro deck, or like the sacrifice aggro deck. I don't think it's together yet, but I am keeping an eye on this card for the future.
It is incredible how situational this card is. You can come up with a lot of ways and reasons to use it, but then when you play, there's just so many times where you're like, "Ooh, that is not how I wanted to spend my turn." Even when it comes with a 5/3. So I've had a lot of trouble with this card. Haven't been able to make it work. When it's been played against me, I've killed it pretty easily, to be honest. Like very easily. So Grim Wanderer isn't quite there for me yet, but this card is, the stat line is scary. 2 mana, 5/3 flash, right? Like there must be something there. So if people want to keep digging and brewing, like this is a good build around to keep working on.
Couldn't this be another good Luris card?
Seems like a good Luris card, but what's Luris? Right? We don't play that format.
Yeah, who's Luris?
Yeah.
What am I talking about?
Lure who? Is that a dragon?
Lure what now?
Lurzy whatsy?
Lure ran away from home.
I'm telling you, man, a weekend of playing Standard 2022, even when I'm busy doing other things, and it feels like everything from War of the Spark through Ikoria was a bad dream.
Yes. I can't tell you how many times I've been like, okay, I need to play around Extinction of, oh wait, no, I don't.
You don't.
Oh, like
Winota.
I don't have to worry about Winota coming.
No.
I mean, it's almost every game on stream. I'm like, well, I'm playing around, and then my chat's like, no, that card's not in the format, and it's like every time it's a revelation.
Oh yeah,
it's like, wow, this is what Standard could be like.
The Elder Gargaroth is totally gonna clown us. No, it's not. The Ugin is on his way. No. Sultai Ultimatum.
Yeah. And speaking of La ran away from home, I've gotten so used to like clicking view battlefield after I look at my opening hand to see which companion my opponent is playing. I just never have to do that again in Standard past rotation, and that just feels awesome.
I want to talk more about that next week.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So supporting the Goblins deck, if there is one, is this card. You see a pair of goblins. 2 and a red instant, choose one, charge them. Creatures you control get +2/+0 until end of turn. or befriend them. Create 2/1/1 red goblin creature tokens. So why don't you tell us about this card?
The goblins are supposed to be charging you and then get +2/+0. Like, why when you charge the goblins, how are you supposed to get +2/+0 to charge some little baby goblins? This card it doesn't make any sense.
That's true. Flavor fail.
Okay, since
off with their heads.
That's all. That's all I wanted to. No, so this is more of a. It will get played in the Goblin deck, but we've already discussed it. It's not a game changer for that deck, but do think about it because it can create a lot of damage out of nowhere if the opponent has 1 or 2 creatures. End step, you see a pair of goblins, their turn, attack, and because the shuffler is fine, of course, they have another one, and they cast the charge them side, and it can be a ton of damage. So it's worth being aware of, but it's not really a big deal. I do think it, like, the Winota thing with this is real, because if you think you're safe or whatever's going on isn't a big deal, in standard on the end step, they go make 2 goblins, untap, play Winota, get triggers. That's something that deck lost when it lost Raise the Alarm, and it has it back in a card that isn't as good as Raise the Alarm, but isn't as bad as every other 3 mana make 2 creatures effect, because it also just has the Anthem effect, which is really good with Blade Historian, and that will surprise some people. So I thought that this is important for standard Winota.
No, I agree. I think that this card is more playable than it first looks. The ability to make 2 bodies and pump the team, it's just going to be relevant enough of the time. I do expect this card to see play, especially if the mono red deck is okay, and if it is a Goblins deck, then I think this could be good. And I think this is another card kind of on the tack that you were going with, where I want to call this Ember Cleave at home.
Okay.
So it will, you'll if this becomes a player in standard, you'll have these turns where your opponent swings in with like 5 creatures, and you have to be thinking about, okay, if all of them get +2/+0, what should I block, etc., etc. So yeah, I think that's a good one to highlight. On the same note, I wanted to point out Battle Cry Goblin. I think that if there is a Goblins deck, this will definitely see play in it. This is 1 and a red creature goblin at uncommon at 2/2. 1 and a red. Goblins you control get +1/+0 and gain haste until end of turn. And then it has Pack Tactics. Whenever this card attacks, if you attack with creatures with total power 6 or greater this combat, create a 1/1 red goblin creature token that's tapped and attacking. So this card does a lot for you, especially if you're going wide. And note, you can use this pump ability as many times as you want, and it is cheap and it pumps the whole team. So like, this is no joke.
Yeah, and itself. This is one of the goblins that surprised me with its kind of, it puts you in spots where they always get to use their mana well and convert it into damage. So this is much better than it looks. Like, I don't know. I'm not sure what else to add to it, because I think it really only, I think it needs that tribal payoff. I don't know if I'd play it in any deck that isn't a Goblin deck, like a Boros deck. I don't think needs it, but it actually was surprisingly effective in a Goblin deck.
Yeah, it is. This card definitely moves the needle in that deck specifically, for sure. Okay, moving on, Guardian of Faith. So we discussed this card briefly as well. This is the 1 white Spirit Knight flash creature token, which comes in and phases out your other creatures. This card I still think is strong. Have you played against it on the 2022 ladder?
Not on the 2022 ladder. I played against it in some standard that I played just immediate, like with the new cards, and it's an annoying card for sure. It definitely comes with enough versatility that it makes you adjust when to remove things. So if sorcery removal is a thing, this card is pretty good. It's not nearly as good when there's a ton of instant speed removal, which I think is kind of the bar right now. You know what I mean? Soul Shatter, Power Word Kill isn't great, but people are still running it at this point. Frostbite and Dragon's Fire are probably the big ones. And There's not a lot of sorcery speed removal for this to prey on. The sweepers, though, like Shadow's Verdict, like this might get you as long as you're able to apply pressure with your other cards, right? I think that the biggest problem with Guardian of Faith is the creature lands, because when rather than hold up mana, you'd probably prefer to be attacking with your creature land, and if you attack with your creature land, you don't have mana for Guardian of Faith.
Yep, that's true. It's a good point. Here's where this card impressed me. I was in a creature mirror with a mono white deck. I was playing my mono green deck, and I had gotten them on the defensive. So I swung in. It was one of those situations where they were at low enough life. They had a bunch of blockers. They needed to tender a lot of blocks to, stay alive, right? And so I mean, it was a huge board. I had like an Asika's Chariot. I had some cat tokens. I had some other green creatures. It was just a massive attack. They had a lot of blockers. They tendered like all of these blocks, and then they just flashed in Guardian of Faith. And I was looking at because I alphaed, right? And I was looking at my board, and I was like, oh God, what's my life total? I could just be dead here. And fortunately, I was at like 14 life, and they had something like 10 or 11 power on the board. I very nearly died. And that is a situation you need to be aware of when this card is in a format.
I'm sure I'm also guilty of this, but this is at least twice this show that you've had a story of like, this card was really impressive. I very nearly died, but I didn't.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
I just love those stories. I'm sure I do it too. I just think it's funny that we did that twice today.
No, I mean, that's a good point. But I think that this card in situations like that, when you're racing, and especially when Embercleave isn't in the format, like when you don't have a lot of trampling attackers, I think that this card can make close games very difficult.
Oh yeah, Embercleave, lack of trample. Yes, I didn't even connect those dots. That's true. Good point.
Yeah. So that's just something that you can do, especially if you have a bunch of tokens. You can just like declare a bunch of blockers, flashing Guardian of Faith, keep your tokens. It's just, it has other uses. I think people think of this as like an anti-sweeper, anti-removal card. This can also just make racing an opponent very, very, very difficult. Okay, moving on to its Loyal Companion here. This is a card which a lot of people have been high on, and it's probably one of the favorite cards in the set for a lot of people who remember its predecessor. So Loyal Warhound, 1 and a green, 1 and a white, creature dog at rare. It is a 3/1 with vigilance. And when Loyal Warhound ETBs, if an opponent controls more lands than you, search a library for a basic plains card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. So the card this calls back to is Knight of the White Orchid. This card is better than that card in some ways and worse in some ways. So one of the ways that it's better is that this costs only 1 and a white, which means you can play it in basically any deck you feel like, as long as it has white in it, of course. Also, the 3 power and the vigilance is pretty nice. So I think that this card is total player. I wouldn't fault anyone for putting this in any of their like white creature decks. Having said that, I haven't been blown away by it so far. Maybe it's just that, again, I've been playing like mono green decks that don't care that much about 3/1s and stuff like that. But I don't know. What do you think, CGB?
I think that this card, when you don't have the land, and which happens pretty often with the hand smoothing algorithm that likes to give you 2 landers in your 24 land decks, when you don't have the land, this card is a lifesaver.
Yeah.
And you are going to be so happy you're playing it. But the cost of this card in Standard 2022 and Standard right now is that you don't play your white 3-drop on turn 3. And what is the best thing about playing white right now? It's the 3-drops. It's Elite Spellbinder. It's Skyclave Apparition. It's Maul of the Skyclaves and Redain and others. Like there aren't, you can't even fit them all into a deck. There are so many busted white 3-drops. And if you are going to get your planes off of Loyal Warhound, you're going to have to play this on what would be the 3-drop turn, because your opponent has to have more land than you. So you have to play this first. You get a tap land. Then you can still make your land drop if you have another one, but you only have enough mana left for a 1-drop. So that sucks in a few ways. I found some other weird awkwardness with this, with Monk of the Open Fist, the card that you can fetch with the Grandmaster of Flowers, because I want to double spell. I have the ability to double spell, but if I play my land first, then I'm not going to be able to fetch with the Warhound. So I can't play Knight of the Open Fist first on the same turn. So I have to play Loyal Warhound, then the Monk of the Open Fist. I said Knight, I'm sorry. Then I play Monk of the Open Fist, but it doesn't get a counter because it's my second spell. So there's actually a lot of weird awkwardness baked into this card in the format right now. I don't think it's a dud because I don't think there are many good 2-drops. I just think that getting the planes, like I'm less than 20% with it. I'm just playing this as 3/1 Vigilance 80% of the time. And I don't know if that's good enough. Maybe I should be doing something else.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, same here. I have ultimately ended up being unimpressed whenever this card's entered the battlefield. And I think it's partly because it's just at cross purposes with what white wants to be doing, right? Like white's curve usually tops out at 4. They don't usually have a lot that they want to do after that.
Yeah, this ramps you to 5. It's like a 3 to 5 ramp card. Which what are our 5-drops? So maybe we're playing the wrong white deck. Maybe it's actually a sneaky Doomscar deck card.
So here's another thing, right? Like this card could become better out of the sideboard against like a ramp deck, right? Or maybe like a deck that really wants to play Emergent Sequence on 2 or something like that. Now, granted, like a lot of ramp has historically been, like, for example, we had Growth Spiral, which doesn't actually, you don't get them with Loyal Warhound because they'll do it on the end of your turn, right? Or, people were playing cards like Cultivate, which come down on 3. And so this is kind of, you're not like impressing anyone by playing Warhound after your opponent plays Cultivate. You're just not keeping up at that point. But that's one thing that I think about. If there's a deck which is playing cards like Emergent Sequence or like putting more lands onto the battlefield very early in the game, then a Warhound could be a way to try to kind of keep up.
I'd try to blink it with Yorion, but we know what happened to Yorion.
He went the way of the Yorion. He went the way of the Lars. Okay, let's see. Is there anything else for us to look at in this category? I think that we are done with aggro, and now we conveniently move on to control. And CGB is going to preach the control way of life.
All right, the first card we're going to talk about is Mind Flayer. Mind Flayer gives me Stranger Things vibes, which, by the way, Demogorgon was also a Stranger Things villain. That's how I know it's Clutches of the Demogorgon is Demogorgon. Anyway, Mind Flayer is 3 and a blue 3/3 horror, and it's a rare, and it says Dominate Monster. When Mind Flayer enters the battlefield, gain control of target creature for as long as you control Mind Flayer. So we have a 5 mana, gain control of target creature on blue. Is this good? 3/3 is really easy to kill. Like 4 toughness is a breaking point in the format at the moment. I haven't seen a lot of places where I can afford to drop a Mind Flayer, but I thought it was worth mentioning because, especially like with a control deck, if there is one that doesn't play many creatures or plays creatures that are insanely hard to remove, and there is a sideboarded format where the opponent takes out their removal, it might be really fun to sideboard in a Mind Flayer if they took out all their Frostbites. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's a very powerful card, and I agree with you. I see it having niche cases for like specific decks that either don't have a lot of removal or they are looking to board out their removal. And I mean, Mind Flayer, here's the thing. If this card sticks for even 1 turn, it could just be game over. So you have to remember that too. Sometimes this is just the make 'em have it kind of a card. It's also a card that you can just, you can like a good scenario for a card like Mind Flayer is that you use cards like Shadow's Verdict to mop up smaller creatures, and then your opponent kind of plays out their last threat, which is maybe a Vorinclex or something like that, and then you just drop Mind Flayer, and all of a sudden your opponent's playing off the top of their deck, and they they maybe don't have an answer at that point. So those are the kind of scenarios where Mind Flayer can be really, really strong.
If you want to run an unusual shell with kind of you can run like Thassa or Teleportation Circle, you can run Mind Flayer, and you can run something like a Witch's Oven, so that every time you steal something, you get to sacrifice it, and you can just keep blinking the Mind Flayer, and just you take their stuff, and then before you give it back, you keep offing it. Like that sounds toxic and mean.
Yeah, sounds like a fun thing to do in the play queue.
Speaking of a fun thing to do in the play queue, Sphere of Annihilation is an X-black artifact. When it enters the battlefield with X void counters on it, it's a rare. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile Sphere of Annihilation, all creatures and planeswalkers with mana value less than or equal to the number of void counters on it, and all creature planeswalker cards in graveyards with mana value less than or equal to the number of void counters on it. We call it Ugin at Home.
I love it. It is indeed Ugin at Home.
What do you think of Sphere of Annihilation? Is this I have so many problems with this card, but I've had people like sending me lists with 4 of this since the moment it was spoiled.
I mean, it's a turn late and a dollar short, right? It's a turn late and a mana short. Okay, this card's really weird. I agree with you that it has a lot of problems. I think anyone who thinks this is like the next Extinction event or something has another thought coming. So yeah, it's probably not going to be main decked at all. I'd be surprised if it were. There might be some edge cases where there are particular matchups in which this is good. One of the main issues is just that it gives your opponent an entire turn to play around it. And so if it's good against what's already on the board, then it gives your opponent a turn to play something which it's not going to be good against. And then if it's good against something you anticipate them playing, they just don't play it. So that's kind of that's the rub, right? Yep. That's the rub with Sphere of Annihilation. There are some edge cases, like, so for example, if your opponent is making a lot of tokens, then this can in theory just be like a 1 mana, wrath your opponent's tokens, and it's slow, but it sure is efficient. So that's kind of an edge case, but I don't see this showing up in just normal play. What do you think?
I think this is one of the most effective ways ever printed to time walk yourself.
Yep. Yep. It's like you spent the mana and your opponent got the turn.
If your opponent's board is good, then why would you want to take a beating from it from another turn for another turn and let them play over the top of it? Like you put this on 4 and they play a 5. Now you sweep their board and then you're still got to deal with the 5. I can't. And I can't believe how many people are sending it to me like this is, they think it's a me thing. And I'm like, this ain't it. So I wanted to clear the air about how I felt about Sphere of Annihilation on this podcast.
Yep. It's a card with uses, but I don't think that those uses are going to show up in standard anytime soon.
The next one, which I'm curious if it will have uses, is Sudden Insight. This is 4 blue uncommon instant, and it says draw a card for each different mana value among non-land cards in your graveyard. I like this because you can, if you just curve and it's all spells, or you self-mill yourself in some way, you can have a 6 mana draw 5 at instant speed. That's a big reload. As far as 6 mana, we've seen 6 mana draw 4 has been playable. Commence the Endgame was a draw 2 that made a large token, which this does not, but it was a 6 mana instant that drew cards and saw a good amount of play. So I'm kind of wondering, I'm going to try to do something with it. I'm not optimistic, but I figure if you're going to resolve a draw effect in this format, do the one that just totally reloads your hand. It sounds pretty fun to me. I also think of cards like the lessons, right? So if you play like a learn spell and then you go get a lesson and you play the lesson in 2 cards, you kind of made 2 different casting costs that go to the graveyard. Maybe make this more of a refill. I don't know. Just something I thought was kind of cool.
So this card's definitely a build around, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you have to tune your entire deck to be good with this card.
Yep, it's a puzzle card. Yep.
Because you want this to be like a draw 5 or even a draw 6.
Yep.
Note that it gets better once you've cast 1, because it's going to be 6 mana towards your next one. And I also think this card gets better with discard spells. So actually, I think a really good use case for this could be the Unexpected Windfall, right? You're putting an additional CMC card in the graveyard with the discard.
Yep.
And then you're also making mana, which will help you cast this spell. So this could be part of like some kind of go big, make a bunch of mana, draw a bunch of cards, kind of over the top strategy.
People who like Teferi's tutelage are drooling over that curve you just mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, it's got uses. It's actually another thing that makes cards with like X costs better, because in theory they, such as your Sphere of Annihilation, right? Mm-hmm. Because
no,
they
not that one. Nope.
Because they cost 1, right? So it's another way like to exploit cards which have kind of these random costs, which maybe like the effective cost of the card ends up being the same as another card in your curve, but the cost in the graveyard is different.
Yep,
so
like Erebos' Intervention is a good example.
It's a very, very good example, right? So these are all things that can make a card like this better. I think in a vacuum, it's worse than just like a Graven Lore or whatever. But I think you're right. I think that this can be like this could almost be like Harness Infinity or something.
Yeah.
In the right deck.
Yeah. Or Reconstruct History is a card I've put multiple videos up building around. I like this kind of puzzle.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. Don't like ordinarily just pretend this card doesn't exist. But if there's like a particular cool control deck or like a particular cool like go over the top deck, absolutely.
The next card that I have to bring up is Portable Hole, and this was one of the ones that was spoiled very early on, though, and you've probably seen it by now if you've played it all. 1 white artifact to exile target permanent, non-land permanent of mana cost 2 or less. So I said that tokens don't die easily anymore, but this is one way that tokens die very easily, and it's blinkable or a piece on the battlefield to use for something else like a Galazeth Prismari. And I think that Portable Hole is good, but I mean, especially in 2022 standard, this card is a 1 or a 10, man. You either need it or it is a disaster because your opponent has absolutely no hits for it whatsoever. And there are several dragon-ish decks like that.
Is it dragons? Oh. You just got nothing.
Oh man, does it hurt when that happens, So man, if there was sideboarding, this card is like a quintessential sideboard card. Playing this card with Yorion was as delightful as I hoped it would be. Playing this card with Galazeth Prismari and Shimmer Dragon was as delightful as I hoped it would be.
That's sweet.
So if you can find a way to get more out of your Portable Hole, if there's no targets, that's very important, because if you can't, you're going to be just looking at a handful of holes.
A big 0. After playing with the set for a while, I'm convinced that they included this card to be a class killer. I think that that's something they wanted to be able to kind of keep. They wanted this card to keep the classes from running away with the format. You'll notice that I think most, if not all of the classes cost only 1 or 2 to come down.
Yep.
So this is kind of like the safety valve. And I like that Wizards does this, where they'll print a cycle or a new mechanic which seems really strong, and then rather than worry about having to ban it, they just kind of try to get out ahead of it and put a hate card in the format. And maybe it's not necessary, maybe it doesn't need to go anywhere, but Portable Hole's not going to ever be banned, right? And so it's kind of it's just a low risk way for them to try to hedge against something being too good. So cool play design for sure.
All right. You did aggro, and it was long because they're printing all
so
these
why don't you tackle
cards.
Some of these other ones as well?
All right,
Sounds good.
I'm going to keep doing combo. So the first card I have in our combo category is Wish. Wish is 2 and a red for a sorcery. You may play a card you own from outside the game this turn. I you have to play it this turn. It doesn't go in your hand. I think that's the first thing where if you've ever seen any of the wishes in the past, Glittering Wish, Cunning Wish, Burning Wish, they're tutors, it goes to hand, you play it later. The part where you have to play the card this turn is very mana intensive because you're talking about a 3 mana sorcery. It's basically like how often do you get to play your companion the same turn that you buy it, right? So you have to think that this buys into that play style of either a very late game card or you have somehow generated an absurd amount of mana to make combo things happen. But I played against someone who cast Wish multiple times. I was playing the Faceless Haven Book of Exalted Deeds combo, and they wished for a Field of Ruin that I thought they were going to win, but I managed to pull off the combo not once but twice. So after spending their Field of Ruin, they
so this is another example of the it almost worked.
Maybe. I wouldn't want to give away the ending, but this person also like wished for Xanathar, the Guild Kingpin, which just
that's cool.
Started playing my deck, and I was like, please don't hit my Field of Ruin. It was a very epic game. I just won't talk about the ending, so we won't have to make fun of things I may have said earlier in the show. But I was very impressed in that case. Like, it kind of opened my eyes to, if we ramp or just have an insane amount of mana, then we can use Wish in very unique ways to get all kinds of solutions. And you get them out of red, which is not something you usually have. Teamer is like a color combination that's notorious for not being able to answer everything the way it wants to. And Wish can go get those situational cards if you absolutely need them. So I wanted to bring it up.
Yeah. Wish is it gives you a little bit of that like Teamer Adventures toolbox kind of a thing. It's one of these cards that gets a lot better if you're investing a lot of your time in ramping. So, you know, the more mana you're able to generate, the better Wish becomes and the more powerful things you can yank out of the sideboard with it.
Yeah.
Having said that, it's just like the degree to which this is worse than Fair of Wishes is just, I mean, it's kind of hard to even compare the two of them while they're in the same format together.
But Arjuna, they banned Lucky Clover and that you still have double vision, so you can copy your Wish.
I mean, what am I even talking about?
I don't know what you're talking about. I thought this was obvious.
Oh my God. I mean, okay, so it's cool because it's in red, right? It gives red access to this, and that could enable like some silly combo.
By the way, red, Wish, what? Like, what's red sitting around wishing for? They're the color of smoke and burn and destruction. They get this cute whimsical, I wish upon a star. You know, I never thought Jiminy Cricket was a freaking red mage. All right. Anyway, the next card in combo is Circle of Dreams Druid. This is green for a 2/1 elf druid at rare, and it taps for a green for each creature you control. Guy's Cradle at home. You knew I was going to do it.
And it really is. It really is both of those things.
But any kind of a creature at a reasonable cost that can tap for that much mana is probably worth paying attention to. And the reason I put it in combo is because you can either use it with like a bunch of tokens to power out one specific huge kaboom, gotcha like threat, or you can go infinite. And so if you find an effect that's just, for example, 3 mana, untap target creature, and it's open-ended, then, and this can tap for 4 mana, then you've generated infinite mana. So it's something to keep an eye on for its existence in the format. Have you seen this card get used?
No, I haven't. I saw someone playing an elves deck. You know, they did the classic like black-green Tyvar elves thing, and they were running the Elvish Archdruid, which I mistook for this card initially. But I think that Circle of Dreams Druid could maybe be a player in like an elves deck. You know, that because the Archdruid is capped at 3 mana. This is not capped at 3 mana. And that elves deck goes so wide. Are
you talking about Canopy Tactician?
Is that the one I'm talking about?
It's a 3/3 for 4.
Yes.
Yeah. Canopy Tactician.
Okay, maybe I'm getting them confused,
Elvish
right?
Archdruid is in his historic. Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's right. So I'm getting him confused. So yes, Canopy Tactician. I think it's like a 2/2 that buffs all your other elves, and it taps for 3 green, something like that.
It's a 3/3.
Oh, it's a 3/3.
But
Okay.
yeah.
Yep. Okay. So yeah. So the sky's the limit on Circle of Dreams Druid. So if I was going to build a deck like that, I would probably run some combination of both. Because just that deck also runs the 2-drop elf, which has the 7 mana activated ability to buff the team, right?
Bingo.
So anyway, you can just you can do some silly things there. That's the first place I would be going, is trying to do some kind of elf combo in standard with Circle of Dreams Druid. But like you said, I mean, the sky's the limit on what you could dream up. Now, if you want to think really big, you can start casting the 7 mana dragon, and then
no, I'm thinking bigger. There's the 9 mana dinosaur.
There you go. Yeah, the Tarask or whatever. Tarask.
I don't know.
Yeah, all you need to know about that card is it's unplayable. Anyway, but yeah, I mean, this card is very, very weak, dies to everything, but has powerful implications for sure.
I did lose to an elf deck that played 2 of these and activated that Elvish Warmaster twice and swung for an ungodly
like twice in one turn.
Damage. Yeah,
that's that's so gnarly. Yep.
All right, the next card in combo that I want to cover is Tasha's Hideous Laughter. This is a fun one. This is 1 blue rare sorcery. Each opponent exiles cards from the top of their library until that player has exiled cards with total mana value of 20 or more. I haven't played against it, and I haven't played with it, but I'm going to someday. And there is just this kind of idea that decks with like Lurrus and really low casting costs, that you can just cast this once or twice and they're just done.
Yep. Yeah. It's I mean, I continue to think that this card is powerful and is going to have some kind of a combo somewhere eventually. And yeah, man. What's the there's a card in Zendikar Rising with Kicker, and it mills for like 8 if you kick it or
Maddening
something.
Cacophony.
Yeah, so I think like if you had like a crab Maddening Cacophony, Tasha's Hideous Laughter deck, and then what's the other one? Teferi's Tutelage?
In standard, you could run that. In 2022, you could run the Rogues, Soaring Thought Thief.
Yeah. So there's definitely enough pieces to get like a pretty hardcore mill deck going on. Don't know if it's going to get there, but that's a place that I would look if I was thinking about doing the mill thing.
Yeah.
And then like, it's so if you go to historic or older formats, there's just all kinds of crazy combos, right? Like things that key off of players having cards in exile and stuff like that can start to get pretty ridiculous. Or if there's just like, for example, if you're playing against a deck like there's that Rakdos, what do they call it? Rakdos Arcanist.
Yeah.
Where like no card in the deck costs more than 2 mana or whatever. You could just kind of out of nowhere just gank them out.
Bye.
Especially because that deck's not that fast. Like they do a lot of things, but it's not that fast, right? So that could just be kind of an easy like sideboard option. So yeah, I mean, I'm definitely keeping my eye on it.
The last card I want to cover in the combo category is Minion of the Mighty. And there are already several videos on YouTube of this. Minion of the Mighty is 1 red for an 0/1 Menace Kobold, and when Pack Tactics, when it attacks, if you attacked with power 6 or greater total, you may put a dragon creature card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. I bring it up because in Standard, if you trigger this, you can put in a Terror of Mount Villas, which gives all your creatures double strike on its ETB trigger, and is a 5/5 itself. So if this was 6 power, you give it double strike, you're hitting for 22. So there is a turn 2 kill. If you play this for 1 red, on turn 2, you cast Infuriate and Infuriate on the Minion of the Mighty. You attack, you put in the Terror of Mount Villas, and you deal 22.
Got him. Tybalt's Trickery 2.0.
And this was famous streamer Croaky's preview card. Croaky's told me he was going to be basically doing like conceding, mulliganing and conceding until he made this happen for a video. He queued up against me. My turn 1 portable hole was lethal.
Brutal. You came prepared. Such a CGB way to win that head to head.
It was. I was very proud.
Love it. Love it. I'm sure he'll remember that.
He doesn't even know it was me. We're on anonymous accounts.
Oh, okay. There you go. Okay. So I think that this I think that this brings us to the final cycle we wanted to talk about today. And that is they've printed another color hoser cycle. And I think this is cool overall. I was happy with the last cycle they did, even if it got punishing at times. We all got tired of Ether Gust, for example. But I think that, standard and formats in general do just tend to be better when we have these really efficient hate cards that we can play and just punish people for getting too greedy playing some of the better decks in the format. So the first one that we're going to talk about is Divine Smite. This is 1 and a white instant at uncommon. I think these are all uncommons, by the way. Target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls phases out. If that permanent is black, exile it instead, which is just amazing. So basically you bring this out of the board against black decks and you feel really happy about it.
Yeah, I think so. I'm skeptical of this one because I don't think black is the creature color right now.
Sure.
And when it is, like, those creatures got their value. So Orca already swept your board. Exiling Orca doesn't help you very much. So this is of this cycle, this is the one I think we'll probably see the least play, unless something really changes for black and there's a werewolf set coming. So who knows?
Yeah, I mean, it all depends, right? Like, it's an efficient way to answer your opponent's what was that guy called? The 4/4 that gets counters on it.
The 4/4 that gets counters. It has ward. Is it a regent of some kind?
Yeah,
a vampire.
Yeah, the regent. Yeah, I mean, it does have ward, but it's still an efficient. It's still an efficient thing. You can point at that.
Westgate regent. Nailed it.
Yeah. Yep, the regent. It's also, if your opponent's like onyxing around or something, this can be just a quick way to deal with an onyx, stuff like that. So yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it depends. And that's really basically what applies to all of these cards, is it just depends on the format.
Yep.
So let's talk about the next one, Ray of Frost, 1 and a blue enchantment aura. This has flash, enchant creature. When Ray of Frost enters the battlefield, if enchanted creature is red, tap it. As long as enchanted creature is red, it loses all abilities, and enchanted creature doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. So it's just kind of a basic removal spell. I like that CGB is stoked about this for sure. I mean, this card is good, right? Like, it's good against red. It basically does what you need it to do. I can't think of like any reason this doesn't. I can't think of a reason this gets less good other than maybe something like you put this on your opponent's Torbran and they follow it up with an Anax. Maybe then you're still kind of getting punished by the what is it called? The loyalty or whatever.
Ability? Or the loyalty?
No, not the loyalty. The why am I forgetting the name of it? The devotion. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. The fact that there's still the casting cost.
Yeah, this doesn't change the casting cost, right? So that's an example of a situation which you might get punished for playing a card like this. But in most other situations, this is a really solid card.
Yep. It's an enchantment, so it can trigger in Arcana of Sun's Grace, and you can blink it around with Yorion if you need to do stuff like that in standard. Being able to, like, blue doesn't have cheap removal. It just doesn't get that. It's the only color that doesn't. So it needs ways to interact with like super strong curve out darts, but they don't want to make blue too good, so they don't give it specific removal. And this is a good way to fight blue's greatest adversary.
Indeed. Score 1 point for Covert Co Blue. Okay, next up we have Ray of Enfeeblement. This is 1 black mana at instant. Target creature gets -4/-1 until end of turn. If that creature is white, it gets -4/-4 until end of turn instead. super efficient, solid removal spell, gets around indestructible. Not a lot bad to say about it, really.
I mean, what are you going to not kill with this? A Baneslayer Angel? Like, people aren't doing that. This card gets the job done. And it gets through Selfless Savior if you're playing Standard still. Yeah, this will be a good sideboard card that's going to make mono white pretty upset.
Taste it, Cupcake. Taste it. All right. Next we have Burning Hands.
Have you ever been to Burning Hand? It's a great festival, I hear. Music. Lots of hippie stuff.
Burning Hand. I love it.
Okay.
It's like a juggling festival. Yeah, let's go. So this is 1 and a red instant. Burning Hands deals 2 damage to target creature or planeswalker. If that permanent is green, Burning Hands deals 6 damage instead. What do you think?
Elder Gargaroth? Dead? Lovestruck Beast? Dead? Yeah, red is going to like this card, and they're going to use it to beat decks I don't like. So I'm all about this card.
So one of the nice things about this does splash damage versus other creatures as well, of other colors. So this is one of those examples of like, if you're playing a 2-color deck, this could also just tag like some 1-drop or some 2-drop as well in another color. So, I mean, that's just another good thing to know. You're going to feel pretty bad if your opponent's like otherwise dead Burning Hands just kills your Ebon Death Draco Lich or something. So they'll come up occasionally.
I am going to say that they smartly costed old Norbone as a 7/7 so that your 2-drop didn't kill a 7-drop.
Yeah, that would be a feels bad, man.
But Eliwick Tumblestrum's in trouble. You know, she was fighting to be playable, and this card just showed up and put her back in her place.
Frog Hemoth ain't feeling too good about things.
Singing a different tune.
Yes, indeed. Okay, so let's see. Hunter's Mark is the last one in the cycle. It is 3 and a green instant. The spell costs 3 less to cast if it targets a blue permanent you don't control. The spell can't be countered. Target creature you control gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Then it deals damage equal to its power to target creature or planeswalker you don't control. Frankly, I don't know about you, but I'm not impressed. What do you think?
I mean, I'm playing blue. I don't want to focus on my creatures too much. The can't be countered line is good. It gets through the ward on the Desert Doom. So there is that
is nice.
Yeah,
that is nice.
So if Desert Doom is a specific stop sign that's bothering you, but we already talked about the green deck and how it just seems to have no problem with that card. Unfortunately, it's like the only one who doesn't. So this card is probably not needed to do what green needs to do, is how I would look at it.
Yep, totally agree. The other thing to note is that the spell itself can't get countered, but it says nothing about the target of the spell getting interacted with. And so I think that's one of the things that makes this really, really, really bad, is that like, okay, we don't have Brazen Borrower in the format, but there are still plenty of other bounce spells. And you could just get really badly 2-for-1 trying to play this card.
Yep, not about this one. It might be the worst, which... That would be the third kind of mini cycle in the set that green might have the worst of, which is...
Got shafted on.
Fresh design space. What did Wizards do to the person in charge of making green busted? And yet it still might be busted.
Yeah. They're going to be skating on their equity for a long time to come, I think. All right. That, my friends, and CGB. Sorry, I didn't mean to imply that you weren't one of my friends. It just came out that way. That, everybody, concludes our set review for Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. So the first thing I want to say before I forget is let us know what you felt about this set review. It's a very different style than we've done in the past. Personally, I think it was an improvement, but let's see what the people say about it. But CGB, after having looked at all of these cards and played the set for a little while, what are you walking away with?
I'm walking away with standard 2022, man. Like, I think this, both the hype going into the set and what we've seen as far as like viewership numbers on Twitch, along with the summer malaise that often sets in this time of year, there just wasn't enough. There wasn't much hype or hope that this would change standard. But I mean, just add us a queue with an early rotation and it seems to change everything. And these cards are all over Standard 2022 and running that format. Like the best decks are making good use of these cards. A lot of these cards. Yeah. Like this is an impactful set, just not on Standard, not on Historic, not on all the formats you'd expect, which tells us that when the rotation does come in this fall, you're gonna want to know what's going on with Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. So
yeah, exactly. They've included enough must-have cards like the creature lands, like some of these dragons, that I think that this is a safe, like, you can buy packs of this set, you can draft this set, you can invest in this set. It's fine. It's going to be around. You'll have a use for these cards. So yeah, I am pleasantly surprised, I will say, with this set. I think that ultimately it is, and I think that it is head and shoulders above like your average core set, which is where this slots into the design space. So I think that they did a great job with that. The flavor's cool. I just overall am feeling really good about it. And I fully agree that with Standard 2022 now being around, like, oh, dude, it's so sweet. It's so sweet. So I can't wait for us to get to our next week's show where we just go through everything that's happening in that format. It's going to be sweet. Make sure you don't miss it. You can find that at Covert Go Blue's YouTube channel. Just look up Covert Go Blue. You'll find him. You can also find that at anyway, you can find Arena Craft Podcast. Anyway, you listen to your podcast. You can find this on Spotify. We are on Spotify, iTunes, etc. You can also cast both of us streaming. Man, I'm tired. You can catch both of us streaming on Twitch.
Tag me in.
Okay,
tag me in.
Take us away. Take us away.
You can find Covert Go Blue on Twitch at Covert Go Blue. Also, Arena Craft Podcast on Twitch. Or is it Arena Craft Pod?
Podcast.
Yeah, yes, that's what I thought. So, Arena Craft Podcast on Twitch. And you've been streaming more. You've been getting some numbers.
I have been streaming a lot lately.
Yep. And you can find this podcast on all the podcasting platforms like Google Podcasts and Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It is there. You have to search for it. It's complicated, but you're going to do great. And you can find it on Covert Go Blue's YouTube channel. You talked about some of this already, but when you tag me in, I'm not exactly sure where we are. But I would like to thank absolutely everybody for sitting through this epic podcast. It's always one of the most fun. And I would like to especially thank Arjuna for putting up with me for this much time out of your day. So with that, and thank you to Bottle Brush for the sweet YouTube video editing as well. So
yes, and I forget to say this often, but we do have a Patreon now. Yes, go find the Patreons. A link to it in the show notes. Patreon.com/ArenaCraft Podcast. We really, really appreciate all of our patrons. Y'all keep the lights on and keep things cool and keep us motivated. So thank you for everything that you do. And if you're a listener and you enjoy this show and you want to just take it to the next level and see us thrive and prosper and keep doing it for a long time to come, then you can become a patron and help us to do that.
So for exhausted Arjuna and for hungry, sleepy CGB, this has been the Adventure in the Forgotten Realms set review. Later, crafties.
Later, crafties.
When the set review goes too far, that's what happens. Food comes out.